Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sport Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Hope everyone's having a great day out there, out and about, whatever you're doing. Also hope you're staying hydrated today because let's be realistic, it is pretty hot outside. So we got a lot to get to on the show here on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies lose again last night in Arizona. Eagles have an injury today at training camp, and how will that impact the final roster cuts as we go along? Coming up on the show, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. He joins us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2:40 p.m. Typically on game night, you hear Dave Weinberg join. Well, Dave Weinberg will doing for a Weinberg Wednesday at 3:20 today to get into more about a multitude of different topics. Plus, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Bird podcast. We are roughly about, 30 hours away, roughly, from the next Eagles preseason game. You can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. And as always, Jeff Kerr joins us at 5:25, CBS Sports NFL writer. He covers the Eagles for us over here at 97.3 ESPN. So we got a lot of football to get to throughout the show. And as always, you can chime in as well. The text board is 609-403-0973. You can direct message the show to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank in Seattle City. Just download the app, message the show, check in with us throughout the show. But we got to get to the Eagles stuff first. We'll get to the Phillies because the Phillies, I'm going to keep using the word disappointing until further notice. I feel like disappointing is probably right now the best word possible when it comes to the Phillies. But we got to start with the Philadelphia Eagles because definitely a disappointing injury of note that happened here, and that is Tyree Jackson, the up-and-coming tight end, a guy who was expected to be a serious part of at least the team's decisions moving forward. He's done, at least for the preseason, and it's definitely disappointing. Tyree Jackson's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks with a broken bone in his back that he suffered during the joint practices with the Patriots. He was seen grabbing his back at practice, and then later it was confirmed that he's going to miss 8 to 10 weeks. So there's two reasons why that this is actually a huge story point for the Eagles. And this is why you need to pay attention to this. Number one, you can't put Jackson on the IR with a designation to return because he's not even on the roster yet. You see, he wasn't already on the original 53. So he would have to make the team first. Then they can pull off some sort of like funky move and put him on the IR. So when it comes to the 53-man roster, you got to make a decision. You either got to put him on the roster and then IR him afterward, or you're going to have to turn around and let him go. Because there's no way a guy with a broken bone in his back is going to be able to play football anytime soon. And 8 to 10 weeks is a long time. I remember what happened with Carson Wentz with his broken back, how much of a fiasco that was. And when you're 6'7" and 250, you got a long back to work with. So, despite how promising it has been, the idea was Jackson was going to make the roster and would be part of the reason why Zach Ertz would be moved. Well, now when it comes to final cutdowns, you're going to have to cut someone then let Jackson be on the initial 53, then put him on the short-term IR, then bring somebody back, whoever that may be. And you're really playing with fire in that scenario, because just because you have a handshake agreement with somebody, there's no guarantee that that guy is going to actually still be there when you want him to be there. Or you could put Jackson on the full-term IR, and he would just be done for the year, which would be disappointing, but it'd be a way to at least protect him and keep him on the team for next year. But if you believe he can come back this year and be a contributor, then you don't want him out for the entire year unless you are okay with redshirting him. So whatever the Eagles decide to do with Jackson is going to impact this roster. Now, people are still assuming that Zach Ertz may get traded. If he does get traded, then your tight ends right now would be Dallas Goedert and Richard Rodgers without Jackson out there. And you have to decide between maybe like a Jack Stoll or somebody if you want to have a third tight end, or maybe you don't go with 3 tight ends. Maybe you only go with 2 and just hope for the best. But if Zach Ertz is going to be on this team for this season, then guess what? If he's on the team, then how do you handle that? As I said before, I'm working under the assumption that the Eagles haven't made a definitive decision on Zach Ertz yet. I feel like they made a much more definitive decision on the left tackle and Dillard and Mailata situation than they have about Ertz, because the fact they still haven't traded Ertz tells me that they're still waiting on the right deal to come along. So this Tyree Jackson thing is disappointing. The young man looked looked pretty good. Not very good, but pretty good in his preseason action last Thursday. Him being injured definitely changes all the dynamics of the tight end position moving forward. And whether Zach Ertz plays on this team or not this year is going to determine what they decide to do with Jackson as well. Listen, if you're going into the season with Goddard, with Ertz, and with, let's say, Richard Rodgers are your 3 tight ends, which is what most people would assume, then the idea is that Jackson becomes, for lack of a better term, expendable. My impression is that the idea is that Ertz was not going to be here for the 2021 season, and then you would keep Jackson. If Ertz is here, then maybe you do IR Jackson for the entire year and then just bank on him for next year. I mean, there's even a scenario where, how about this? What if the Eagles decide to keep Ertz, put Jackson on the initial roster, cut Rodgers with the intention of bringing him back, then you trade Ertz before the deadline, so you wait for the season to play out to get him, maybe build up his value or something, and then when Tyree Jackson is set to come back, you trade Ertz and the roster spot is already open for Jackson. So there's a lot of ways this can play out, and it's something to keep an eye on because, like I said, Jackson's injury definitely complicates things for the Eagles when it comes to their 53-man roster plans. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Yell here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on YouTube and Twitter. A couple other things to keep an eye on coming out of the Eagles joint practices. It's becoming more and more apparent if you watch any of the practice videos, whether you are going off of what the reporters are saying, that there's definitely a player who's ascending and there's definitely a player who's descending at practice. While guys like Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor have actually had a good week overall, aside from just the highlight catches, the guy who has not played well so far this week is Travis Fulgham. And there's a part of me that's starting to wonder if Fulgham's going to make this team. You know, for a guy who went out there and had an incredible couple games, well, 5 weeks basically for the Eagles last year, I was assuming, and maybe it was a bad job on me to assume this because we know what assumptions do. I was making the assumption that Fulgham was going to come into this camp saying, Alshon Jeffrey isn't here anymore. I can go out here and take control of my own destiny. I don't have to worry about a coaching staff that may or may not like me. I can make a fresh new start with this coaching staff. I can go out here and do some things. But he had 0 targets in the first preseason game. So he didn't really have a chance to show you much of anything on the field in the preseason game. And then in practice this week, he's been underwhelming. And while guys like Watkins and Rager are out there making plays against the Patriots secondary in these drills and in these 7-on-7s and these 11-on-11s, Fulgham isn't. And I'm curious to find out, does he make this team? He's a guy that I want to know, does he get any legitimate playing action tomorrow night? Because he didn't get it in last week's game. He was invisible. You know, Watkins and Rager and now Devonta Smith returning from his knee sprain to at least be involved in team drills. It seems like that the wide receivers who are out there are mostly doing their job. I mean, Greg Ward's Mr. Reliable. You know what he is. He's not going to be the most amazing player. He's not going to be the worst player. But he's going to go out there and give you an honest effort each week. Well, now you're looking around and you're like, well, where's Fulgham? What's Fulgham going to do? I'm telling you guys. I'm starting to wonder as of August 18th. Now, this could change. Obviously, things do change. But I am really wondering what is going to happen with this team if they look at Fulgham and they say, you know what? I don't think we have a reason to keep this guy. And then what do? Do they just outright release him and don't let him make the 53-man roster? Do you look at him and maybe say, could we throw him into a trade to just dump him on somebody and with another player and get a draft pick out of it? You know, if you're going to, I talked about the fact that Dillard might not get you a lot of value in a trade now after what we saw with the trade that happened yesterday. So I'm curious to find out, do you look at Fulgham and say, you know what, we can trade both Dillard and Fulgham, move on from both of them, and then just kind of go forward without either guy on the roster, and you package them both for like a 4th or a 5th round pick. Like I said yesterday, when the Panthers traded Greg Little, the 5th offensive tackle in the 2019 draft, who was taken in a draft class that Dillard was the number 1 offensive tackle picked in that draft class, and they only got a 7th round pick for him, Dillard's value has got to be pretty darn low, just based on that assessment. I mean, who knows? Maybe you find a team that's got a bunch of injuries and you say, you want Dillard, you want Ertz, you want Fulgham. I don't know. But the reality is that I'm looking at Fulgham and he's becoming more and more expendable. And this team may be better off going out to try to find some veteran who is not going to make another team's roster. I know a lot of times that Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan on the Inside the Birds pod, and Jeff Mosher will join us coming up at 4 p.m. today to talk more about the Eagles. They've talked a lot about the fact that you have a guy in Fulgham and Ward and Smith and Watkins and Hightower and Rager. These are all very young players, and you don't have a veteran out there at all. Remember last year, one of the veterans supposed to be Marquise Goodwin. He's gone. Not even going to be on the 49ers, it looks like. So what does that mean for Fulgham now? If you can't make an impact with this team, with a new coaching staff, with a coaching staff that is very good at working with receivers, this is what they're known for. This is their specialty. And if we're getting an elevated of performance, and play, from Rager and Watkins, then Fulgham, like I said, he may be the odd man out. And as I look at this team right now, your wide receivers, Devonta Smith, Jalen Rager, Quez Watkins, Greg Ward. I don't know who the fifth guy is. Because if Fulgham can't step up, if he can't pick it up, over 3 weeks, he's been either invisible or underwhelming. I mean, heck, you look at the Eagles' own Twitter feed, there's video of Sirianni telling Fulgham, hey, man, you got to drag that toe. Got to get that last foot down. Sirianni standing back there and coaching up Fulgham on the video. And you're thinking, wow. Like, on one hand, you're thinking, Sirianni, he's coaching these guys up. He's invested. He's really focused in on these guys. But on the other hand, it's like, why do you need the head coach to remind you to drag the one foot? I don't know. It's not looking good for Fulgham. And like I said, with Tyree Jackson out, that changes some of your plans with this team. It changes some of your long-term thinking when it comes to this roster. Maybe Fulgham is the guy who gets cut to keep Jackson on the roster so you can IR him with the designation for 8 weeks to return. And maybe you go out and see, okay, is someone going to pick up Fulgham? Someone going to bring him into their camp? Telling you guys, this situation is going to be interesting to play out as we get closer and closer to the start of the season. Because we got 2 more preseason games. And that's it. We got tomorrow against the Patriots, next week against the Jets. And then the Eagles' first game is not far away. You're going to have some time, obviously, between the final preseason game and the regular season. You got a gap from August 27th to September 12th to finish figuring this all out. So that means an entire full week before the first preparations for the season. So we actually might not even know what this roster is going to look like for week 1 for another 3 weeks. Like September 7th, September 8th, possibly, depending on what happens in these preseason games. But I keep an eye on Fulgham. These wide receivers are making plays in these joint practices. Fulgham's not one of them. And that should be concerning for a guy who played great for 5 weeks. Maybe he is a flash in the pan. Josh Hennig here, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. Sports Bash being brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. For great deals on Acura's award-winning lineups, shop online at delvalacuradealers.com. You can join the conversation as always. Of course, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. You can get priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Also, text board is open for you as always. You can chime in there as well, 609-403-0973. I see messages coming in on the YouTube channel as well. So we'll get to some of you guys' messages a little bit here on the show as well. Don't forget, we'll talk some Phillies coming up as well. It might be McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City at 2:40 p.m. And a lot of Eagles talk. Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joins us at 3:20 p.m. Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at 4 p.m. CBS Sports NFL writer Jeff Kerr joining us at 5:25. And like I said, you guys can join the conversation as well. How do you feel about the Tyree Jackson broken bone in his back? Fulgham not playing well at practice. Are you looking forward to the next preseason game? Are you indifferent about it? Let us know right here. Direct messages through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Text 609-403-0973. And we're also live on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes price sales. See dealer for details.
Have you seen what some dealers are now charging for new cars and used vehicles? It's outrageous. But at Bennett Chevrolet, you still pay what GM supplier employees pay for brand new Chevys. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates. That's not either or, you get both. And that can save you up to 25% off MSRP. And Bennett has 0% financing available to save you even more. Got a trade? Bennett's paying top dollar. And we mean top dollar. A minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can tow to our lot. And if it's in good shape, we'll pay more. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. And Bennett makes it so easy. No sales pressure, no negotiating, just pure joy. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So you can see why nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet. Nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
The Sports Bash, live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter this hour of the Sports Bash, being brought to you by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Run with us. Visit them online at deere.com. Get some of your guys' thoughts and comments here as we talk about the latest from Eagles camp. Phillies lose last night, and of course, all the happenings around the NFL. We'll get to all that right here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. As always, you can message the show directly, priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Text the show 609-403-0973. And, of course, we have messages over on YouTube and Twitter. I love to get the messages in the order they came in. Theodore Nicholas says, Greg Ward is great for about 14 to 17 play drives. The average is 7 yards of reception. First of all, that kind of thinking is very, very small-minded. If we're going to measure everything about an athlete or a guy's performance by their yards per catch, then we might as well just stop trying, right? Like, think about it. I'm going to go double check this, but there's a guy who had a pretty incredible career that some people think is a borderline Hall of Famer. I want to know what his yards per catch average was. So humor me for a second. So you're saying Greg Ward averages 7 yards per catch. Well, Wes Welker was averaging about 9 yards per catch a few seasons. And that guy had 112, 111, 123, 86, 122, 118. And he averaged somewhere between 9 and 10 yards per catch. Now you're saying, well, that's 3 more yards, Josh. Yeah, but he was doing that in an offense that was so much better than Greg Ward. Greg Ward played for a team that went through numerous injuries in 2019 where he was forced to play a role that was outside of his skill set. He's a better slot receiver than the outside receiver in 2019. 2020, he played with a quarterback who could not throw interceptions, was horrible at scanning the field. Greg Ward averaged 9.1 yards per catch in 2019 and 7.9 in 2020. So no, he doesn't average 7 yards per reception. He averages around 8, which is 2 yards less than a guy who's potentially going to the Hall of Fame, Wes Welker, who also was a slot receiver. The job of a guy like Greg Ward is be a chain mover and be a safety valve. You don't need him to average 15, 16 yards per catch. Look at all the years people complain about, oh man, Zach Ertz, he can't break a tackle. He can't get yards after the catch. But he was reliable. You could trust him. He would go out there and get you 88 catches in a season. And he averages about 10 yards a catch, 11 yards a catch. So if Greg Ward 1 year averages 9, and another year he averages 7.8, which means he averages overall 8 yards per catch, I think that's fine. Because if you're doing that on 3rd and 6 and you're getting 8 yards, that's a first down. If you're getting 8 yards on first down, guess what that is? 2nd and 2. Don't diminish Greg Ward because he's not best player for your fantasy football team, okay? Greg Ward has already proven to be arguably one of the most reliable players on this team. On a team last year that was 26 in the NFL in points scored, that was one of the most underwhelming offenses we've ever seen in Philadelphia in probably 20 years. Greg Ward led the team in targets. He led the team in catches. He was third on the team in receiving yards. And he led them in pass catches for touchdowns. Excuse me. So, I think Greg Ward is more than just a 14-7 play guy who averages 7 yards per reception. Again, I think the problem is we live in a world where we judge people on numbers and not actually watching them play football. And that's a problem. Listen, I'm not saying Greg Ward is something special, but every team needs a Greg Ward. Every team needs a guy who is going to be reliable. Every team needs that guy. Again, I'm not saying that he's going to go to the Pro Bowl or anything like that, but every team needs a guy who it's 3rd and 6, and there's bracketed coverage over the top on your 2 primary receivers. The tight end got bumped on the line. The timing is completely off on the play, and the running back is in there pass blocking, and then Greg Ward just happens to wiggle his way open, gets 7 yards on a 3rd and 6 play, first down. Every team needs that guy. I think people underrate Greg Ward's value sometimes. Now, there are other people who also overrate his value as well. I'm not going to act like that's not happening as well. But everybody needs a Greg Ward. A couple more messages coming in. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Get a couple more of your messages that are popping in. Nick from Brigantine says, Josh, I only remember Fulgham having his first 2 games being good. I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about well, first of all, the San Francisco game was literally only 2 catches, and he caught a touchdown in that game. What we're referring to is the games after that, when he had 10 catches, 6 catches, 5 catches, 6 catches. And he seemed to score a touchdown almost every single game. From the San Francisco game through, what is it, the Dallas game. Here we go. Just want to make sure I have it correctly. So the 5 games we're talking about is San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Giants, Cowboys. In those games, he had 44 targets, 29 catches. He averaged 15 yards per catch. He had 4 touchdown catches. He was really good. He played really well for 5 games. And realistically, it's more like 4 games because he only had 2 catches in the San Francisco game. They caught that big touchdown in. But after that, after those games, when he had 44 targets over 5 games, the rest of the season, he had 23 targets, no touchdowns, 104 yards. They bailed on him because Doug Peterson was too interested in leaning on Alshon Jeffrey. So the Fulgham thing is so bizarre to me because this is a guy, like I said, he had a 5-game stretch where he was dynamic. They bailed on him. They got rid of that coaching staff. They bring in a coaching staff whose specialty is working with wide receivers. You go from the quarterback factory of Peterson, DiFilippo, Frank Reich, and Press Taylor to the wide receiver factory of Sirianni, Steichen, Kevin Petula. And for whatever reason, I don't understand why, Fulgham has just been underwhelming for 3 weeks. He didn't even have a catch in the preseason game last week. What's the guy doing? Is the guy really even on the team? Like, I don't even know. That's why I'm saying I'm wondering if this guy is even going to make the roster. Realistically, you might be better off moving on, bailing on Fulgham at this point, because if he can't pick up the slack right now, then man, there's some questions. There's some serious questions to be had with this Eagles team. We're going to get more into that. We got a lot of football to get to throughout the show. Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Coming up next, we're going to get into the Phillies. Joe Girardi had some choice things to say about his team after the game last night. Many of you may not have heard it or seen what he said because, well, you know, they're in Arizona. 9:40 first pitch. We're going to get into the Phillies and more with Mike McGarry coming up next here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live, as always, on YouTube and Twitter, where you can watch the show, join the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tomorrow night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
New Jersey car owners, stop what you're doing and come see AJ, the trade-in man, at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Cancel that service appointment. Let your tires go bald. Don't put another penny in that old car. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed, so cash in your vehicle now. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. New 2021 Nissan Frontier 4x4 truck. 0 due at signing. Lease $349 per month. Stuck in a loan or lease? We can get you released. We'll buy your car for cash, even if you don't buy a car from us. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. Get $3,000 back on every 2021 Nissan Murano and pay 0 interest for 60 months in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. 36-month, 10,000 miles per year lease. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 9/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live as always on YouTube and Twitter, where you can see joining us next here as he does each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Phillies, another loss, but the manager definitely had some interesting things to say last night. Doesn't mean anything, though. Mike McGarry joins us from the press of Atlantic City right now here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, how are you doing after the late night with the Phillies?
I'm doing well. Late night with the Phillies and the Mets last night. Neither result worked out well for either team, basically.
Well, let me start with this. Who's calling out of their team do you think will actually matter more? Girardi's unhappiness or the Mets owner Steve Cohen being ticked off?
Probably neither, at this point, you can say all you want to say, but the guys on the field have to get it done. And right now, the problem with both teams is neither team is hitting, and neither team is really hitting the ball. Forget about clutch hitting with runners in scoring position. For the Mets, it's been a problem all season long. And for the Phillies, it's been a sporadic problem, and it's reared its ugly head again. What did the Phillies have? 3 hits last night. They get a good pitch game from Kyle Gibson. But if you don't hit the ball, you're not going to win. And with the Phillies, it's interesting. The Phillies, during the 8-game winning streak, I think they hit something like 18 home runs. They are built to hit home runs. And if they hit home runs, they're going to win, and they're just not hitting them now. They got one from Bryce Harper last night, but that was about it.
Yeah, I was going to say they got the one homer from Harper, but then it seemed like the entire offense, as Girardi said after the game, just went quiet. And listen, if you have a starting pitcher who goes out there, goes 6 innings, only gives up 3 runs, that's a respectable performance. We're not expecting Kyle Gibson to be Jacob deGrom. We're just asking him to not implode like some of the other pitchers have this year. And with the Phillies offense, like you said, they got 3 hits the entire night and 2 runs against a team and supposed to be one of the worst teams in baseball. That's unacceptable, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, we asked Bryce Harper spoke on Sunday after the homestand concluded with the loss to the Cincinnati Reds, and he was asked about the offense, and he said, well, we faced some good pitching, right? We faced Tyler Mahle of Cincinnati, who's had a good year. We, a couple of Dodger guys, they're tough to hit. But last night, Arizona's putting guys in the game, relievers in the game with ERAs in the teens at one point. And if you can't hit those guys, you're in trouble. And you're absolutely right. If your starting pitcher goes out against the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that's won 38 games this year, and gives up 3 runs, then you should win a baseball game. And the Phillies didn't do that last night. But it also goes to show you what everybody sort of jumped on around here was strength of schedule. And Girardi was adamant about it last night. He doesn't want to hear about it, and it showed last night. I mean, the Phillies are in no position to look at a schedule and mark a game down as a W, and that was never more clear last night. And now, this West Coast trip gets off to a tough start with the loss last night.
Yeah, the one quote from Girardi last night was, we got beat because we didn't hit. No matter who you play, if you don't hit, if you don't pitch, if you don't run the bases, if you don't play defense, you're going to lose in this league. That's the bottom line. That was one of the Girardi quotes from the presser last night. And, listen, there's a part of me, Mike, that feels, I don't want to say bad for Girardi, but I have a little bit of empathy for him, let's say, because of the fact that I feel like he's trying to push the right buttons. And it seems like whatever buttons he's pushing, it's just not working, and I don't think he knows what to do anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? And he has juggled the lineup, right? And right now the lineup is probably not at full strength because Rhys Hoskins is out with an injury. He could come off the 10-day IL today, although all indications are that's not going to happen. And the way the game ended last night with an Alec Bohm pop-up, I mean, has there been a bigger disappointment this season than Alec Bohm? Forget about his problems in the field. It's his problems at the plate. Now you look at it, on both the Mets case and the Phillies case, Phillies are 2.5 back of the Braves. I remember talking with Mike Gill. It seems like the Miami Marlins beat the Phillies and Mets, but when you look up at the standings, the Marlins are in last place. They got 40 wins. Well, who always beats the Marlins? The answer, the Braves. The Braves are pounding the Marlins. The Braves 2.5 up on the Phillies. I think they're 3.5, maybe 4 up on the Mets. This is a stretch where you don't want to be 5-6 games back heading into September, because history tells you that you're that far back when September 1st comes. You finish that far back when the season ends.
And, Mike, you got to win the games that are in front of you. You can't worry about the Mets and the Braves every single night and hope for the best that they lose too, right? Like, you got to go out there and win your games. Harper said that on Sunday, and I felt like last night Harper did his job. He went out, swung his bat, got a home run. When Segura had that pop out in the infield with 2 runners on with 2 outs, I think it was the 7th inning last night, I'm watching, I'm thinking, you can't make that swing in that situation. Like, it's almost like the Phillies just forgot how to hit with runners on base all of a sudden, because guess what? They got a couple guys on last night, a couple different times, and it was just like, we didn't get it tonight. Like, no, you got to have a little more urgency out there.
Yeah, that's been the problem with both teams, the Mets and the Phillies, is hitting with runners in scoring position. I think what you're seeing with Segura right now is maybe a little bit of a market correction, right? He's mired in a slump now. He's really had an outstanding season with the bat up until this point. But when you look at his numbers, is he really that good of a hitter? Guys revert to the back of their baseball card, and Segura might be getting to the back of his baseball card. And to get to the back of his baseball card, he's going to be in a slump, and that's what he's in now. So maybe, they got the best they were going to get out of Gene Segura early in the season. Again, a lot of managers have said guys always get to those numbers that are on the back of their baseball card. Segura was hitting sort of above his weight all season long. Maybe he's reverting to that baseball card, and that means, the slump that he's in now is part of that.
Mike McGarry joining us here on the Sports Bash Wednesday edition on 97.3 ESPN at AC Press McGarry on Twitter. Check out all of his coverage of the Phillies and more over at PressOfAtlanticCity.com. Mike, last night we were told that Sam Coonrod and Freddie Galvis are rehabbing over at Lehigh Valley. Vince Velasquez is rehabbing over at Clearwater. But do any of those guys really make a difference for this team down the stretch, or is this just more bodies to throw out there?
I'll say no to Vince Velasquez. I think we've all seen enough of him, right? Sam Coonrod could possibly be another arm in the bullpen to maybe help out. I guess the biggest name there would be Galvez. You hope that maybe he could come in as a late inning defensive replacement, maybe play occasionally, give Didi Gregorius a break, Ronald Torreyes a break, because it's clearly that Bohm's not playing anymore. So it looks like Torreyes is out there every day, and I don't think Torreyes is an everyday player, so he's in danger of getting a little bit of exposed. A little bit of overexposed there. So if Galvis can come in, be a late inning defensive replacement, maybe fill in on that left side of the infield, I think out of those 3 guys, he's the guy that you would probably look for and say, would be the biggest name back and give a boost. I don't think anybody wants to see Vince Velasquez on the mound in a game that counts. And, the bullpen has actually pitched pretty well with, this sort of thing they've gone to of Hector Neris in the 6th and 7th inning, Archie Bradley in the 8th, and Ian Kennedy in the 9th. They've actually kind of solidified that. So Coonrod would be another arm back there, but Galvez would be the name there that I think we would look for to be the biggest contributor.
Well, maybe Velasquez could be a defensive replacement over in left field. You know what I mean?
Right. He made a great throw last year, right? So our pinch runner or something, like great athlete.
Great athlete. I don't know if I want him on pitching anymore, but
right,
maybe
exactly. I don't know if I want to see it starting the game, but great athlete. Yeah.
Right. Speaking of pitching tonight, Ranger Suarez goes for the Phillies tonight's game. What do you want to see from Suarez tonight in another start here? Because overall, he's pitched well, but he hasn't pitched very deep in the games.
Right. And I don't know if we're at, must-win territory yet, but we're getting pretty close with the Phillies. If they would lose tonight, tomorrow might be, their first must-win of the season. So what I want to see out of Ranger Suarez is I want to see 5, maybe 6 shutout innings. I think he went 4s last time out. I think he can go that 90 pitches, go 5-6 innings, shut down Arizona, and the Phillies better wake up the bats and get a win and start, to put themselves in position to take 2 out of 3 from Arizona. Look, you're not going to go in and win every game, but you take 2 out of 3 from Arizona, you can live with that. That's good. You put yourself behind the 8 ball by losing last night. So what you need from Suarez is 5-6 innings where you shut down the Arizona offense, and then you need the Phillies offense to get going. You need to win the night to put yourself in position to take 2 out of 3. Because if you lose tonight and you're facing a sweep tomorrow, that's not good.
Must Win column by Mike McGarry each week in the Press of Atlantic City here on 97.3 ESPN. Little connectivity there.
Right.
Speaking of the Press of Atlantic City, Mike, you guys just posted a little bit of the breaking news locally here about Tom Farraco stepping down from Middle Township. I don't think people realize, maybe they forget what happened with him, how he had to leave, he came back, and you're talking about a coach in this area that, has been one of the top coaches in all of South Jersey for years, and it seems like he's stepping down for good this time.
Yeah, it does. I just got off the phone with him minutes before I jumped on here with you. He stepped down today. One of the great coaches in New Jersey high school basketball history, right? 731 wins, 266 losses, 3 state titles, 9 South Jersey championships, a 1993 team that went to the Tournament of Champions final, won 30 games, might be the best team ever in Cape Atlantic League history. Coached from 81 to 2016, had some health problems around 2014, 2015 with prostate cancer, stepped down in 2016, came back in 2019. They were 2-4 last year. A lot of COVID issues as we all battled last season. Seems like all those teams down in Cape May kind of had issues with COVID. But stepping down just based on the fact that it's just the grind. He's 63 years old. The program is headed on the upswing. They have a lot of good, talented, younger players, so the program is headed in the right direction. But he kind of runs a family-owned liquor store business down there in Cape May, and the grind of coaching high school basketball, which I think is something that listeners should know. It's not just the 25 games that come in December, January, and February. Coaching high school basketball is a year-round thing. It's off-season weightlifting. It's summer league games. It's skill workouts. It's a grind, and he just kind of said in the story that I posted on pressofacd.com, he just doesn't feel like he can give 100%. So he's going to step down. But obviously, one of the great coaches, regardless of sports, in Cape Atlantic League, Shore, and even New Jersey State high school history.
Mike, this area has been very fortunate to have guys like, Tom Farraco at Middle Township, Paul Rodeo over at St. Augustine Prep. You have Gene Allen over at Atlantic City. But these guys aren't getting any younger. And it seems like, we're, for lack of a better term, we're almost waiting for that next generation to start, falling in line. And I got to say, I'm curious to see who are the next coaches who come into this area who make the impact that those men have.
Yeah, Josh, that is a great point and exactly what I was thinking. In today's world, I don't know if we're going to see the Paul Rodeos, the Tom Farracos, the Gene Allens. The Paul Saccos of St. Joe football, the Pete Lancettas of St. Augustine football. I don't know if we're going to see guys coach 25, 30 years. It's a different world today. There's a lot of demands on people's time. It's a different world with coaching, social media, parents, etc. Life's probably a lot more complicated in 2021 than it was in 1981 when Tom Farraco got started. So that's a great point, and a point that, I've kind of made several times and I might make again this week is, if you've got one of these guys at this school, you better appreciate every day that guy is there, because he's not going to be there forever. And, we might be having an era or entering an era where a similar type figure is just not coming along. So that's a great point by you right there.
Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. Follow him on Twitter at AC Press McGarry. Check out all of his work over at thepressofatlanticcity.com. And he'll be back on Friday's edition of the show. And, of course, the Phillies continue their West Coast swing. Mike, keep up with the caffeine, and hopefully you can survive the Phillies game tonight.
All right, Josh, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. So as we mentioned, the big news coming out, Tom Farraco stepping down from Middle Township High School. Amazing career as a head coach. And like I told my McGarry, we're losing some pretty amazing people. These guys aren't going to be around forever. And I like what McGarry said. We need to appreciate the coaches we have now that we have them before it's too late. More to come coming up. Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joins us at 3:20 today. Geoff Mosher, football at 4 p.m. And, of course, we'll hear from you guys on the messages. Josh Hennig, filling for Mike Gill, 97.3
On someone else
ESPN.
excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes price sale. See dealer for details.
Have you seen what some dealers are now charging for new cars and used vehicles? It's outrageous. But at Bennett Chevrolet, you still pay what GM supplier employees pay for brand new Chevys. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates. That's not either or, you get both. And that can save you up to 25% off MSRP. And Bennett has 0% financing available to save you even more. Got a trade? Bennett's paying top dollar. And we mean top dollar. A minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can tow to our lot. And if it's in good shape, we'll pay more. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. And Bennett makes it so easy. No sales pressure, no negotiating, just pure joy. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So you can see why nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet. Nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
This is a message for the people of Cape May County. For over a year,
Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, me too.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on a Hump Day Wednesday edition of the show, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. Follow at 973 ESPN. Also, make sure you get the 97.3 ESPN mobile app handy. Free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Join the conversation. Direct message to show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You also can text in 609-403-0973. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and Twitter, you can comment on the stream there as well. We opened the show talking some Eagles, got into the Phillies in the last segment with McGarry. So there's a lot going on with those two teams right now. For those that didn't hear, Tyree Jackson has a broken bone in his back. The quarterback turned tight end. He was supposed to be a big part of this team, at least expected to make the roster, right? Okay. Expected to at least, go out there and be a part of the roster. And I think that, without him and his injury is going to impact what they do with this roster. Like I said, don't be surprised if you have a situation where, let's be realistic, the Eagles don't know exactly what they're doing with Zach Ertz yet. There's nothing been confirmed on multiple fronts with the tight end situation. So for Jackson, he was a guy who was a riser at camp, and we're going to find out in short order what exactly they're going to do with him. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm assuming that they want to keep him on the team and on the roster. So I'm going to, again, make the assumption that this team is at some point going to have to either put him on the injured list for the rest of the year, basically turn it into a redshirt year for him if they keep Zach Ertz. If they don't keep Zach Ertz, they're going to have to basically manipulate the system, hope for the best by cutting somebody, letting Jackson make the roster. Because remember, in order to put him on injured reserve with a designation to come back after 8 weeks, he has to make the roster first because of him and his contract situation. So as a result, you can't designate him the return until he actually makes the roster. So then you got to risk not keeping somebody on the roster, then putting him on the injured reserve with designation return, and then hoping the person that you cut that you want to keep is going to come back. Listen, you can have a handshake agreement all you want. Doesn't mean the player is actually going to come back. What if that player gets a better offer to go somewhere else? And then he bails on you. Then the handshake agreement means nothing. This is a very, very risky situation for the Eagles. So again, Tyree Jackson, broken back. We're going to keep an eye on what's going on with that. We'll ask Geoff Mosher what he would do coming up at 4 p.m. on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The other thing to keep an eye on is a guy who has not played well at camp and has been kind of invisible for the last few weeks is, look at this, Travis Fulgham. I don't know if he makes this team. I'm putting it out there. I said in the last hour, I'll say it again this hour. I don't know if Fulgham makes this team. I think there has to be serious questions about him moving forward because he hasn't made the impact you thought he would. For a guy who was as big as he was for a 5-game stretch last year with a coaching staff with a lot of wide receiver specialists, he hasn't gotten the job done, and I'm curious to find out if he makes this team. In a week where Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor go out there, have an impact in the joint practices, you have a guy in Fulgham who's been invisible. Something to keep an eye on as we get closer and closer to the second preseason game, which is roughly 28 hours from now. The Eagles will be back on the football field against the Patriots. They joint practice against them all week. Now they get to go into more game action versus the Patriots. Of course, you can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Of course, we'll have more coverage for you with the Eagles still to come. Dave Weinberg with a Weinberg Wednesday will join us coming up at 3:20 p.m. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and CBS Sports NFL writer Geoff Kerr will join us coming up tonight as well at 5:25 each week, as he does here on 97.3 ESPN. A couple other NFL nuggets out there to just kind of touch base on. Trying to find, I just saw a news item. So the Bears are going to be without their rookie tackle. Tevin Jenkins is going to get back surgery, and he's expected to miss a good amount of time. The Bears haven't given a specific time frame of when he could return, but getting back surgery is probably something that if you don't miss the entire season, you're going to miss at least a good chunk of it. So, serious loss for the Bears, especially considering their quarterback situation. I got to wonder, if Andy Dalton doesn't play well and they put in Justin Fields, did Andy Dalton not play well because he didn't have the best offensive line in front of him? Or did he not play well because he's just washed as a quarterback? Two different things. Dak Prescott limited at Wednesday's practice, throwing, but gradually throwing out there. I got to say, the first two episodes of Hard Knocks, I'm not impressed. The Dallas Cowboys are supposed to be this big story in the NFL, and Hard Knocks has actually turned them into being uninteresting. I was mentioning this earlier yesterday to Rob Motti on the Sports Bash yesterday on 97.3 ESPN. The first episodes of Hard Knocks was a complete snooze. If you were entertained by the first episode of Hard Knocks, either you must be a reality sports diehard or you're a Cowboys diehard, because there's no reality where that was interesting. I mean, I spent half the episode watching Ezekiel Elliott wrap a gift and then give it to Dak Prescott. The show opened the first episode interesting with that interview one-on-one with Dak, but the rest of the stuff was kind of blah. I know Micah Parsons is special. Now, the second episode, they start digging into DiNucci, and I'm just like, great. Are we really desperate for storylines at Cowboys camp that we got to focus on DiNucci? And by the way, we're not just focusing on DiNucci. The entire segment where they focus on him, they don't even talk about the fact that why he's competing for a spot on the roster. Because Garrett Gilbert ahead of him has played better in the preseason games. I'm telling you, folks, I've always been a Hard Knocks guy. I've always loved Hard Knocks. I've always been a fan of what they do with giving you an inside look. But man, I mean, what is going on here? I was excited for Hard Knocks because of the fact I was like, okay, this is cool. NFC East team, Cowboys, overhyped. We always love, to pick on the Cowboys. And realistically, I got more to pick on the Hard Knocks producers than I have anything else. The only real thing I can pick on the Cowboys is Mike McCarthy has to be the most uninspiring coach who curses I've ever seen in my life. Mike McCarthy is trying to rile up the guys and motivate them. He has said absolutely nothing that is. If Mike McCarthy was trying to put out a video to recruit people to play for him, I'm out. Mike McCarthy does not come off as inspiring or motivating. And considering the weird relationship between him and his quarterback, Dak Prescott, I don't know if Mike McCarthy is going to last in that job. I really don't. And, DiNucci getting these multiple shots at being on the Cowboys roster, we all know why DiNucci's there. Don't tell me it's because of arm talent. A lot of guys have arm talent in football, okay? A lot of guys can throw the football. DiNucci's there because he, years ago, played junior high basketball for Mike McCarthy's brother. And DiNucci's a guy who apparently has really impressed McCarthy, and he really thinks there's something there. Well, so far in 2 preseason games, DiNucci has thrown 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And he's got a total of almost 200 passing yards in 2 games. He's also chucking it out there. 17 pass attempts in 1 game, 14 in another. Hard Knocks doesn't mention the fact that he's competing with Garrett Gilbert and Cooper Rush. Oh, DiNucci. Talk about DiNucci. But why is DiNucci competing for the job? Why is his spot on the roster in question? Let's not mention that. Let's not mention the fact that Cooper Rush has been on and off this roster for years. That he knows the offense and the players well. Let's not mention the fact that the guy who's probably the more likely backup quarterback right now, Garrett Gilbert, was a stud prospect coming out of high school, was at Texas, and then had to transfer to SMU to keep his football career going. And when he did get a little bit of playing time, Gilbert wasn't bad. Yeah, he only played in 1 game last year, but 243 yards, a touchdown, interception isn't bad. DiNucci looked like an abomination of football against the Philadelphia Eagles. But this is where Hard Knocks drops the ball this year, and I'm thoroughly disappointed. I was hoping that Hard Knocks would, in years past, when they were with the Browns or when they were with the Rams or when they were with multiple other teams, you got storylines, you had interesting moments, you had explanations for guys competing for jobs. This year, it's almost like Hard Knocks is just mailing it in. It's like, we got the Cowboys. We don't have to work that hard. People are going to tune in no matter what. What a disappointment. Incredible disappointment, Hard Knocks this year. I was hoping for some human interest stories. Instead, I got DiNucci and Micah Parsons playing chess. I think they're almost trying to also make a star out of Zeke. Like, Zeke's one of the 5 best running backs in the league, right? You don't need to make a star out of Zeke Elliott. Nobody cares about him wrapping gifts. Nobody cares about him needing to put baby powder. I mean, it's just like I'm watching the second episode. I'm like, what am I watching? What is this? This is like reality TV gone wrong over here. Maybe if you're someone who likes the Kardashians, this is Hard Knocks for you, but not for me. It's almost like the football team's an excuse to actually not talk about football. Very poor. Very, very bad job by Hard Knocks. Josh Hennig filling in here for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. Of course, when I fill in for Mike Gill, there's no game night. So as a result, we have to shuffle some things around on the scheduling. So coming up next, we will have our Weinberg Wednesday segment, but about 3 hours earlier than usual. He usually joins me each and every Wednesday around 6:20. He's going to join us today at 3:20. Dave was kind enough to accommodate with his schedule. So we'll talk with him about the Eagles, Tom Farraco stepping down from Mill Township boys basketball, all that and more with Weinberg coming up next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Hump Day Wednesday.
There's never an off season for the NFL. It's football at 4, every day at 4 p.m. on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes price sales. See dealer for details.
Have you seen what some dealers are now charging for new cars and used vehicles? It's outrageous. But at Bennett Chevrolet, you still pay what GM supplier employees pay for brand new Chevys. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates. That's not either or, you get both. And that can save you up to 25% off MSRP. And Bennett has 0% financing available to save you even more. Got a trade? Bennett's paying top dollar, and we mean top dollar. A minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can tow to our lot. And if it's in good shape, we'll pay more. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. And Bennett makes it so easy. No sales pressure, no negotiating, just pure joy. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So you can see why nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet. Nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, Hump Day, Wednesday edition of the show here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. Of course, no game night today because I'm here on the Sports Bash, so he's kind enough to join us 3 hours earlier than usual, which means I'm probably cutting into some sort of outdoor activity of his, so I appreciate him jumping on the show. Yes, it is Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday here, joining us on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, of course, live on YouTube and Twitter. Dave, how you doing on this day?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you? Unfortunately, I'm not outside. I had to take my sister-in-law to a doctor's appointment, so I was sitting in a parking lot of a very hot car, but I couldn't miss talking with you.
Well, I was worried I was interrupting some sort of bike ride or golf round or something this afternoon. So,
Oh, I got that in this morning because I had a feeling you'd be calling me early.
okay, a little premonition going on there. I got you. So, Dave, obviously the Eagles were under about 28 hours from their next preseason game. And I want to ask you, as someone who covered the Eagles for over the course of 3 different decades, I want to know, what can we actually take from a preseason game? What can we actually read into these games? Because with a new coaching staff, with all the things that are going on, what can we really say is usable coming from a preseason game like we saw last Thursday and then tomorrow night?
Right. Not a whole lot, to be honest with you. As we've said before, the game plans are very vanilla, very basic. So you're basically just looking for execution. You're looking for the coaches and the players to be able to make the most of what they're given. Like I said, execute the plays the best they can. Mainly, you want to see, well, in the Eagles' case, you want to see Jalen Hurts have a couple good series before he departs for Joe Flacco and Nick Mullins. But you need to. It's primarily for the younger guys, to be quite honest with you. They're the ones who are they're auditioning not only for the Eagles but for the rest of the NFL. They want to be able to put some good plays on tape because the cut downs have already started. Unfortunately, we saw that Abdullah Anderson got let go by the Steelers, but that's going to be happening for the next couple of weeks now. People are going to be getting let go, and they're going to be looking to catch on with other teams. So the better they can play in the preseason opportunities are given, the better their chances are of catching on with somebody else if they don't stick with the Eagles.
Now, one of the guys who was potentially at least in line to maybe have a shot to make the team was Tyree Jackson. Broken bone in his back today at the joint practice. And I got to wonder, how is this going to impact the roster, Dave? Because we know, is Zach Ertz going to be here? Is he not going to be here? You can't put Jackson on the short-term IR until he actually makes the team. So you got to risk maybe cutting somebody and hoping that you can have a handshake agreement for them to come back. This really kind of murkies the waters for the Eagles when it comes to maybe some of their roster decisions. Do they just put Jackson on the full-term IR, redshirt him, and hope again for next year? A very interesting situation here with Jackson now.
Yeah, and he really impressed me the last week. I mean, he didn't have like huge stats or anything, but just the fact that he's been able to make that transition to tight end from quarterback, I believe it was.
Yes,
he's shown a lot of athleticism, a lot of potential. So I would seriously consider putting him on a full-time IR or finding a way to place him on the practice squad. I guess probably waive him now and hope nobody else picks him up, and then you can add him at a later date. It's yeah, you're right. It's a tough decision to make. You got to weigh the potential against the right now, and I do think Zach is going to be here, and that kind of solidifies the tight end situation a little bit with Zach and Dallas Goedert, maybe Rodgers as well. So I think Jackson's more of a long-term project kind of guy. So, but if they can find a way to keep him around, they should do it.
And they had 11 targets to the tight ends in the last preseason game out of 28 pass attempts. So it's not like Sirianni's afraid to have his quarterbacks go to the tight ends. For a guy who's more well known for cultivating wide receivers, he said, hey, man, Hurts, Flacco, if you see the tight end open, hit the tight end. I don't care. That's part of the offense. So it's good to see that Sirianni is at least saying, even in a vanilla situation, hit the open guy. Don't hyper focus on a specific player on a specific play.
Yeah, and that's the main thing you want to see out of the quarterbacks. You want to see if they have the ability to adapt to the situation. I think Jalen's already proven that he can do that, but it was nice to see him do it in game action too for the preseason. And then there's no secret that the tight ends are going to be a focal point of this offense. You have you have a pretty good tandem with Zach and Dallas, so you have to take advantage of that. But and again, Devontae Smith is going to get a little bit of a taste, I guess, on Thursday. So if they can find a way to get some passes to him, that would be great too.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday, 3 hours earlier than usual here on 97.3 ESPN as I fill in for Mike Yell here on the Sports Bash. Dave, you mentioned Hurts. It seems like that all of a sudden, because the national media was at the joint practices this week, everyone is singing Jalen Hurts' praises, which makes me simultaneously shake my head and smile because it's like, oh, good. Everyone else discovered that Jalen Hurts can play quarterback in the NFL thanks to some joint practices. It's like I never understood why people are just so dead set about giving people a chance sometimes to have a chance to be successful when there's literally nothing about Hurts that says he can't play in the NFL. It's not like he's Tim Tebow who just completely whiffed on a block in a preseason game. Like Jalen Hurts was making NFL throws last year and this year. Let the guy go out there and play. Stop writing him off where he has a chance to even prove himself.
Right. Everybody's so quick to rush their judgment with people, and that's a mistake that and sometimes you miss out on somebody who's really going to develop into a top player. I mean, I kind of feel bad for Tim. But I'm a big fan of his, dating back to when he was with Denver and then was with the Eagles for just a brief second. And I still think that he could have been a quarterback in the NFL, but obviously the experts felt differently. And I don't know. I know everybody focused on that missed block. Can you tell? Look around the league at the tight ends that are primarily pass catchers, and you find that they're probably not very good blockers. And even Zach Ertz started out that way. I mean, he's made himself into a good one, and I think Tim might have done the same thing. But he's getting on in age. He's been out of the NFL for a while now. Baseball didn't work out so well, but I mean, I give all the credit in the world for giving it a shot. It didn't work out, but it's not for lack of trying. For them to for people to just trash him as a you can. I think I saw one radio announcer or one broadcaster was saying that you can go into any Gold's Gym and find a guy who can play tight end like Tim Tebow. No, you can't. You're talking about a guy who was a two-time Heisman Trophy winner, a guy who was the best college football player at the time, maybe in the top 5 all time. A guy who made it to was good enough to play in AAA in the minor leagues, albeit not very well, but he still made it. And I just think that they're doing him a real disservice. But to get back to Jalen, you're right. I mean, everybody's just kind of, now you agree that he can play. Well, you were ready to trash him a couple of weeks ago before you went to the joint practice. Give the kid a chance. Let him play a few games here before you decide whether he's going to go to Canton or not.
Right. Yeah. I think people forget. Peyton Manning led the NFL in interceptions his first year in the league. People forget all these young quarterbacks. They go through growing pains. It's part of sports. So, to me, I love Jalen Hurts personally. I'm a huge fan of his. I love his mentality. I love his work ethic.
Same.
I love his leadership. So to me, I'm honestly, I'm supposed to be objective, but I'm also rooting for the guy in some ways because I feel like he's a representation of what hard work can be. Because at the end of the day, football is supposed to be a meritocracy. It's not supposed to be a situation where people are handed jobs anyway, Dave.
Correct. You're right. And Jalen will prove whether he can handle it or not. And I think he can. I'm with you. I'm a pretty big fan of his, dating back to his college days. The leadership thing can't be discounted. I mean, it's not the be all and end all. Obviously, it ultimately comes down to whether you can make the plays or not. But I think he's proven that he certainly has the potential to do so. You heard all that talk about the Deshaun Watson, what have you. I never really thought that was a good idea. I think you got rid of Carson. Give Jalen a chance to prove that he's the guy that can handle the job. And I think he's gotten off to an encouraging start so far.
Now, Dave, just to circle back to what you said about Tebow. So I'm not a Tebow hater. I don't hate
Sure.
Tebow. But my thing with Tim was I felt like he got the opportunity in Jacksonville because of Urban Meyer. And I felt it was a little bit of nepotism for him to get that opportunity instead of him maybe making that transition to tight end and maybe working at it for a while and building up to getting that chance. So that was my problem. It wasn't really as much with Tim.
Question.
It is about the fact that I feel like Urban Meyer
and being from Jacksonville didn't hurt either.
Well, that didn't help either. Yeah, exactly. So, but I just feel like Urban Meyer, he's been really weird down there in Jacksonville. Like, and it's like, he's supposed to be the CEO coach and he says weird stuff and he does weird stuff. And it's like, there's a part of me that thinks Urban Meyer's going to complete bust in the NFL. So to me, the Tebow thing was less about Tim. It was about how Urban has handled the whole thing.
Yeah, Urban. I'm kind of surprised that he even take that job. I mean, he pretty much burned out at Ohio State. A lot of physical and emotional problems. I thought that kind of led him to step away from coaching. Now the NFL was an even bigger pressure cooker. Well, maybe not with people like Ohio, Alabama, what have you, Florida, but it's still a pretty big deal. And I'm surprised that he would even take that job. But yeah, he's a strange guy. I should say a unique guy, kind of a character. It's going to be interesting to see if he can weather the storm and and turn Jacksonville around. I don't know that he'll be able to stick with it long enough to do that, but yeah, that's certainly a different situation. I'm about Nick also, but I guess with any new, you got to get can do it.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Yeah, I got you now. You got me?
Yep, sure do. Sorry about that.
It's all good. Yeah, it's saying Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, I wanted to ask you as well today. The news came out just about an hour ago. Tom Farraco stepping down, at least on his own terms this time, as head coach of Middle Township boys basketball. And it seems like he feels like he's done for good this time. He says he's given all he can to Middle Township, and we just lost Dave Weinberg. We'll try to reconnect with him in just a moment. I was going to ask him about Tom Farraco because Dave has covered high school sports in South Jersey for 3 decades as well. I want to get a little context from him about Farraco stepping down. So we'll try to reconnect with Dave Weinberg here in just a moment. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We talked a lot of football with Dave there. We'll be talking more football coming up. Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, football at 4 p.m. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, coming up at 5:25 tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. So hopefully we can reconnect with Dave. I do want to ask you about Tom Farraco stepping down, because as I asked Mike McGarry earlier, this area has been very fortunate to have some major boys basketball coaches and some great coaches in all sports. And when you look at someone like Tom Farraco, they don't make them like that anymore. There's not a lot of coaches like that. And even on the girls' side, a coach like Steve DePatry has done an incredible job down at Wildwood Catholic. And it just seems like, for these coaches who, are coming in and out, you're not going to get many of those people anymore. I believe we got Dave back here on the stream. Dave, you got me now?
I sure do. Yep. Sorry about that, Dutch. I don't know what's going on. I guess it's the heat and the humidity.
Well, blame it on somebody, because you literally haven't moved the entire time you've been on with me. So it's not like you did anything differently. So,
You're asking me about Tom Farraco?
Yeah, I was asking because it's he's this time retiring what I would say was on his terms. Before cancer pushed him away from the sport. Now he's saying I've given all I can. I'm stepping away, and to me this is a big moment because there's not a lot of coaches like Tom Farraco out there that hang around in programs since 1981.
Yeah, actually, Tom and I go back further than that. He was at Wildwood Catholic when I was at Lower Cape May, and we played baseball against each other for a few years in high school. So, I've known Tom for a long time. And, it's nice that he's able to go out on his own terms, like you said this time. His battle with cancer kind of forced him to the sideline before. And, I was kind of surprised that he'd even come back when he did. But he obviously felt like he owed it to the school, and I guess owed it to himself to give it one more try, but he certainly didn't owe anybody anything. And, he's had a legendary career, a fantastic coach, a great guy too. And, all the best to him. And whatever he decides to do in the future, I guess run a liquor store or what have you, and maybe get a little bit more beach time in. But yeah, he's had a great career, and, he deserves to go down as one of the top coaches ever in the state, to be honest with you.
And I was mentioning earlier, Dave, before you came on, people like Tom Farraco, Paul Rodeo, Gene Allen. I mean, these guys are, big names in South Jersey boys basketball, but they're not getting any younger. What was that?
John Bruno from Ocean City, same thing. Yep.
Yeah, John Bruno. I mean, but these guys aren't getting any younger, Dave. These guys are eventually all going to be moving on and not going to be coaching anymore. And it seems like an entire era of South Jersey boys basketball is slowly fading away.
Yeah, I mean, Dave DeWeese, same thing. He's my age also. I actually played against him in high school also. And, there's a lot of guys that are in that 60, 65, 70-year-old range. And I think there's probably a few guys like in the wings coming up. I mean, Scott McCracken at Wildwood's doing a fantastic job. And he's considerably younger, I think, anyway. But yeah, there's it might be getting time for new blood for some of the younger assistants maybe, or guys who are just waiting for that opportunity to get it. And I don't think the basketball pool here is so deep, and the talent is enormous. The programs are fantastic. I can't see them falling by the white side, but it's just open that it's all a matter of finding the right guy to step in for the guy that's there or just left and keep the program afloat and flourishing. And I think they'll be able to do that.
Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg, 19 extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. He is kind enough to join us from his hot car in the middle of the afternoon, 3 hours earlier than usual for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, go find some cold water and some air conditioning. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Josh. You too. Thanks again. I'll talk to you next week.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN's hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage in South Jersey. For your next local or long distance move, Clark's Moving and Storage is your first call. They're dependable and always show up. Visit them online at clarksmoving.net. We're going to get back to some of your messages coming up next. We got messages coming in on all the platforms here for the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget to direct messaging into the show from the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messages that come in to the show. Thanks to First Bank of Sea City. We are also live on YouTube and Twitter. We got messages over there as well. And, of course, the text board is open, 609-403-0973. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on a Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tomorrow night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Hitting back. Hit. And he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
It's back to school, and at Matt Blatt Kia, our math is easy. Put zero down, make zero payments for 90 days, or pay 0% financing for 60 months on every new 2022 Kia Stinger and Sportage in stock. Plus, we need your trade. We'll even buy it for cash. Even if you don't buy a Kia from us, used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. Worried about your credit? Forget it. We finance your future, not your past. All new 2021 Kia Niro EXEV with zero doing signing and zero security deposit. Lease just $275 per month. It's basic math. Zero down, zero payments, or zero interest for 60 months.
Gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 and 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 for 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity finance into new loan. Niro 36-month lease, 10,000 miles per year. Excludes taxes, title, license, and doc fee. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 9/6/2021.
Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM. 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. So to come, Football on Board, powered by the Insider Bird podcast with Geoff, Mosher. Sports Bash being brought to you by Jenkins. Call Jenkins for heating and air conditioning installation service and maintenance, plumbing, or drain cleaning services. Call 609-641-6440 or JenkinsPlumbingandHeating.com. Get some of your messages now, as we got a bunch of them that came in over the last hour. Of course, you can message the show as you watch the show on YouTube and Twitter. Message the show directly through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, the text board is there as well, 609-403-0973. A couple messages came in a little bit earlier when we talked about the Eagles. Brian, checking on the show, says, hey, Eagles fan from Los Angeles, I believe the Eagles will win 9 games if our offense can score 23, 24 points every game. That's from Brian, Eagles fan in Los Angeles. Here's the thing, Brian, and I don't think you're wrong. I've been saying for a while that to me, I think the Eagles are a 8 to 9 win team. 7, 8, 9 wins, somewhere in that range. If I was saying, you want to take the over under, the Eagles are right now 6.5. I would take the over because, as I said multiple times, I believe that the Eagles lost 3 games specifically because Carson Wentz played that bad. So I think Carson Wentz alone lost you 3 games. You would make up 3 games last year if it wasn't for Carson Wentz. So you would potentially have won 7 games last year instead of 4. So to me, just having a quarterback who is not going to make the same mistakes that Wentz did can win you 3 more games this year. Now, you say the offense needs to score 23, 24 points per game. I think the key to that is Nick Sirianni, because it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. The reality is that you need a guy in the head coach who's going to have this new offense out there. You're going to need to make sure that, realistically, they are not just completely fumbling the situation. You got to make sure that your offense is something that everyone can execute, that everyone can do, that it works out. So I'm very curious to see what the Nick Sirianni offense looks like long term, because we know in the preseason it's pretty much a vanilla situation. It's a vanilla offense. It's a vanilla defense. And I think that when you look at the Eagles, in order for them to score 23, 24 points a game, the offensive play calling has to be there, because the players are only going to be able to do what the coach hands them to do. So the offensive play calls, this variation of the West Coast offense, the utilization of the running backs, to me, a lot of it comes down to the head coach. A couple more messages coming in. Uzi Wolf, watching on YouTube, says, I've been blown away by the Fulgham truthers. He had 2 good games and then disappears once he gets serious coverage. Hasn't done anything since. I really don't understand it. Couple things, Uzi Wolf. First of all, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and I don't understand this where this narrative came from. Did I miss the guy who started the Fulgham had 2 good games? Because I think I missed that narrative. Look, Fulgham had a 5-game stretch. All right. He had a 5-game stretch where he made an impact for this team. Not 2 games, 5. Okay. Someone texted the same thing earlier. Again, did somebody on like national radio or television create some narrative about Fulgham that he was a 2-game wonder instead of a 5-game wonder? Fulgham was among the leaders in the NFL over a 5-game stretch in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. 5-game stretch, not a 2-game stretch, a 5-game stretch. And I'm not a Fulgham guy. I said it earlier, Uzi Wolf. I think that he might not make this roster right now, because the way he's performed in training camp and his invisibility in the first preseason game is a huge, huge negative. But just because I'm not a Fulgham guy, quote unquote, doesn't mean that I can't tell you what the reality is. The reality is that he had 10 catches, 6 catches, 5 catches, 6 catches over a 4-game stretch. And in those 4 games, he had 3 receiving touchdowns. Over the 5-game stretch we talk about, he had 435 receiving yards and 15 yards per catch. So in reality, he played really well for those stretch of games. He was catching almost 90 yards per game over that stretch. And let's say you would take out the San Francisco game. Maybe say, Josh, Fulgham only had 2 catches in the San Francisco game. Fine. Steelers, Ravens, Giants, Cowboys. He still averaged 94 yards per game. He still averaged 10 targets per game. He still averaged 7 catches per game over a 4-game stretch. 14 yards per reception. That's not a 2-game sample size. That is a 4 games. That used to be a quarter of your season. he performed. And I understand Fulgham had multiple drops. Okay? But realistically, did Fulgham cost you the Ravens game? Or did the Eagles defense letting the Ravens get back into that game cost you the game? You can't blame one guy for a loss in a team sport. It's very, very hard for me to accept that. Now, to me, like I said, I look at Fulgham and I see a guy who showed you he was able to do some things last year. But the fact that he has been completely invisible or underwhelming, depending on who you ask, at Eagles camp makes me wonder if he's going to make the team. And that's where I'm coming up with the Fulgham stuff. The Fulgham stuff, I'm not a Fulgham truther, as you call it. I don't love Fulgham. I just think that for a guy who performed as well as he did for what equals a quarter of an NFL season, for him to completely be a non-impact, especially at joint practices where Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor are making numerous plays against the Patriots defense, it just has to make you wonder, can Fulgham make this team? A couple more messages coming in over at 609-403-0973. About the Phillies a little bit earlier, Texter says, last night was another solo home run for Harper. I think it's 18 of his 22 home runs are solo home runs. That's unbelievable. Well, here's the thing, Texter. I can't blame Harper for hitting a home run when no one's on base, when the guys ahead of him are not getting on base. You know, they don't have a natural guy who's a guy who gets on base. In fact, Harper is the guy who's best on the team at getting on base. So Harper himself is top 5 in the National League in on base percentage and slugging. So is it Harper's fault that guys are not on base when he hits home runs? I don't like that narrative. I don't like the narrative that Harper, he only hits solo home runs. I can't be mad about that. At least the guy's hitting home runs. Gene Segura had a pop-up with 2 men on base last night, and I'm like, what are you swinging that pitch for? What was that? You got some miserable pitchers out there in Arizona, and you scored 2 runs on a Tuesday night. You should have won that game. You could have at least won it 4-3 if those 2 runners coming in and score in that situation. Let's get another message in before we run out of time because we were really short here in this segment. We still got football at 4. Geoff Mosher coming up at football at 4. We'll get more to your messages coming up at the second segment of the next hour here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN. Tom from the Village chimes in. We mentioned about Tom Farraco stepping down after a very, very long career as the boys basketball head coach at Middle Township. Tom from the Village says a lot of the problem now is getting teachers or counselors to stay at a school long enough. It's hard to get people to coach when they're basically hopping schools each year chasing money. That's Tom from the Village. Well, the problem is, Tom, not all the coaches are hopping school to school. The problem is that some of these schools have this ever-changing group of people above them. You know, it's hard for the teachers and the coaches to stay if the people above them in the administration are not staying. You know, there's a plethora of examples of coaches who I think would have liked to stay at their current jobs. And I want to name names because I want to betray any information that I know of that may not be appropriate for public consumption. But, you know, there are situations where there are some coaches who wanted to stay where they were at and they weren't given that chance to stay there, or they were forced to find a job elsewhere because of various circumstances. I think the problem is not just the people. You talk about the people who are hopping schools. It's not the coaches, though, always. Sometimes it's these administrators. You know, these people want to move up professionally, or a situation comes up where they have a better job opportunity elsewhere, and they're forced into a situation where, let's be realistic, you know, they want to have different people who are coaching these teams. And then you have parents complaining about coaches and, like how tough the coach is too hard on my son or whatever may happen. There's a lot of variables go into that. So you're right. There's a problem when it comes to people staying at the school, but I think it's more than the coaches themselves. All right, coming up, Football at 4. More Eagles talk next.
Sixers,
It's good.
and Flyers.
Oh, big save by Carter Hart.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Yes, Football at 4, the day before the second Eagles preseason game. We're talking about it right now here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. We're joining us right now to talk more about the Eagles as they are about 26 hours from the next preseason game. Is the one and only Geoff Mosher here on 97.3 ESPN. Joins us each and every Wednesday here on the Sports Bash. Geoff, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, I'm at least certainly doing better than Tyree Jackson because, it's, to me, this is a very interesting story because what the Eagles do with him could have some very interesting consequences on the 53-man roster because as you and Adam talk about on the Inside the Birds pod, Geoff, the initial roster may be one thing, but, there's a lot of ramifications we have with Tyree Jackson because do they put him on the roster and then put him on the injured list with the dedication to return? Do they just put him out for the entire year? What do they do with him? Whatever happens to him could impact somebody else making or not making the roster.
Yeah, so they could roll the dice, right, and waive him with an injured designation at the final cutdowns and see if another team winds up claiming him even while hurt. And of course, that would mean that they would lose him. If they don't, if no team claims the backup developmental tight end who's injured, they would have an opportunity to then bring him back and, when he's healthy, right? And then do it, at that point, they can probably sign him to the practice squad, which is where, I think that they would like to probably develop him anyway. The second thing they can do, Josh, and this is probably the more likely scenario, just out of speculation here, is that you keep him on your 53. You don't cut him, even though he's injured at the moment. And you do wind up cutting a player that you think you can bring back quite easily who's not going to get claimed off waivers. They've got a couple of veterans like a Richard Rodgers, a Hassan Ridgeway, T.Y. McGill, who they probably are going to want to keep for depth purposes, but aren't afraid per se to lose through the waiver wire. So you can cut one of those guys to keep space for Tyree Jackson, and then as soon as you get to the next day and your roster has to be set, you can then put Tyree Jackson on the IR, which now there's different rules. You can bring guys back, whatever. You can put either way. You can put them on IR, which opens up the space, and then you can bring back one of those guys you cut, provided that they aren't claimed. And I think that there's some high confidence that some of the guys I mentioned can be cut without being claimed.
The other question is, how does the Zach Ertz situation impact all this, right? The idea that, is Zach Ertz going to be here? Is he not going to be here? Or could he be traded at the trade deadline? The uncertainty with Ertz probably impacts what the Eagles do with tight end as well, correct?
Oh, I would think so. I mean, if Zach Ertz is here, then you've got Ertz, you have Goddard taking up 2 of your spots. You're probably only going to keep at most 4. And then you've got Richard Rodgers and Jack Stoll, and then there would be no room for Tyree Jackson on the 53. If Ertz is not here, that opens up room to have Tyree Jackson on the 53. Even so, though, the 53, Josh, sometimes you carry guys on your 53, those last 2 or 3 spots. It's like extra practice squad. They're usually inactive on game day, and you're just trying to keep them in your house and develop them. I don't think Tyree Jackson, as nice as of a story as he's been, is someone that the Eagles felt, even when healthy, was going to have an impact on their game day roster in September or maybe even early October. He's a guy who obviously has exceeded expectations, but still needs a lot of development.
Now, after everything you just said, I'm also curious about what this means for the preseason, because now that Jackson's not out there in the preseason, who is the garbage time tight end now? Is it Jack Stoll and who else?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because they just recently waived
Caleb Wilson.
But they still have Jason Kroom. I know he had been hurt. I can't even remember if he's back at this point. They still have, they had moved Hakeem Butler back to wide receiver, but they certainly could move him to tight end or play him in a hybrid like position. They could play more 4 and 5 wide receiver sets if they wanted to. But I do think you'll get a decent amount of run tomorrow night from Jack Stoll and from Richard Rodgers and from Kroom if he's available to play, and some other, the bottom guys.
Football at 4, Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, joining us here on a Wednesday edition on 97.3 ESPN, at Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter. Geoff, the news that came out yesterday that was interesting, the cuts that came down, the waiving of Kerryon Johnson. I haven't talked to you since that happened, and to me, that pretty much signifies that you got 4 running backs making this team. I think it pretty much sets in stone who the running backs are going to be, and it makes a lot of sense because you and Adam have talked about it on the Inside the Birds pod that, listen, Sirianni and Steichen come from very specific offensive backgrounds, and they like having certain running backs on their depth chart, and it feels like all 4 of these running backs, Sanders, Howard, Scott, and Gainwell, all kind of fit the mold of what we've seen from running backs with the Colts and with the Chargers in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Kerryon could have fit the mold. He was not exactly in the, I don't think he reported in the greatest shape of his life, and he really needed to stay healthy because being injured has been a big reason for why he has not been able to, had no staying power with the Lions. And of course he had the knee injury again. And it had become clear that not only had Kerryon not really done anything, but that Jordan Howard, going back to OTAs, Josh, came in with a renewed sense of self and obviously in great shape. He admitted that he was not in good shape last year when he signed with the Dolphins. He had the stinger the year before with the Eagles at the end of the year, didn't work out the right way, and he came back this year ready to go. The Eagles are kind of the only organization that seems to show the kind of faith in him because he had no other offers. Deuce Staley used to love him, by the way. Deuce Staley was a huge fan of Jordan Howard, and Deuce Staley had a lot of respect in the Eagles organization. So not surprised, even with Deuce Staley gone, that they went and brought him back to see what he has. I thought he's looked good since OTAs. He came to training camp ready to take the load take a couple of carries and see what he can do. We saw in the Pittsburgh game, his blitz pickup, which has always been his strength, was on display again. And he's really the only guy right now after Miles Sanders. If Miles Sanders were to get hurt and you need a guy to be able to tote the ball, 12, 15, 17 times a game, he's built for that. Boston Scott is not, and Kenneth Gainwell is not. He is. So he is a really key, vital part of this running back group with Miles as your starter, Jordan Howard as your backup, and you have some good change of pace, change up backs that are similar but also different in Boston Scott and in Kenny Gainwell. And look, Nick Sirianni said it the other day. It's no secret they're going to throw to their running backs. They're going to have formations, Josh, with multiple running backs on the field at the same time. Some of them are going to be lined up in the backfield. Sometimes they'll be lined up in spread formations. They're going to throw the ball to the running backs.
How much do you think also the running backs is going to impact not just who they are throwing to, but in terms of, we know Sirianni is going to run different offense Doug Peterson does. So are we going to potentially see a little more disguising going on, maybe a little bit more modifications of the line of scrimmage? Like, could we see a little bit more variety than we saw with Doug last year? At times was just like, 12 personnel, good luck.
Yeah, and even last year, Doug kind of got very vertical. I do know that the Nick Sirianni philosophy, and we'll see if he's able to execute it, is to try to get the ball in the hands of his playmakers in confined spaces quickly. Get the ball to guys in space and let them use their natural athleticism to create yards after the catch. Obviously, also, you need a quarterback who puts the ball in the right spots in one-on-ones to be able to do that. Jalen Hurts did a nice job of that against Pittsburgh. But, you look at a guy like Jalen Reagor. that's a guy who I think that they want to move all around. You haven't seen it yet in the preseason because they're still just working him into the right condition and the right and making sure everything, his P's and Q's are tight. But at some point, maybe soon, because he's starting to really pick it up, you might see him, line up in the backfield or come on a shallow cross where everything else is deep and you put him in space against the zone there and let him be able to catch the ball, turn up field, and turn the jets on. And you did see some of that with the Quez Watkins tunnel screen there. So I think that mostly illustrated how they want to emphasize getting the ball in the hands of their fast, dynamic playmakers quickly.
Speaking of dynamic, fast playmakers taking on the offensive side of the ball, I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot of Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins this week at the joint practices. And the only thing I've seen of Travis Fulgham was Nick Sirianni criticizing him for not dragging his foot in the back of the end zone. And Geoff, I asked the question earlier, and I want to ask it to you. Is Travis Fulgham going to make this team? Because he was completely invisible in game one, and I haven't heard about him at these joint practices. I've heard about Quez Watkins and Reagor. Even on SportsCenter on television, they're saying, these young receivers of the Eagles are looking really good. Their names are Watkins and Reagor. And I'm like, what happened to Fulgham? Is this supposed to be a coaching staff that's supposed to be all the wide receiver gurus, right? Are all coming to Philadelphia. He went from the quarterback factory to the wide receiver factory, right? And Fulgham has just kind of like faded to black. So, Geoff, is he even going to make this team?
You're asking a very fair question, Josh. And going into camp, I would have told you, just based on lack of depth at that position alone, that it's going to be very difficult for Travis Fulgham to not make the team. I still think at the end of the day, he's going to wind up making it. But I will tell you, the trajectory that he's on now, if he doesn't pick it up, he will be in danger of not making the team. They're probably going to keep 5 receivers. They're not going to keep 6 because they don't have 6 receivers who are merit being kept. You're not just going to say, I want 6 receivers because I need 6 receivers. You're going to keep the number of receivers that you think you need to have to play on game day, including thinking of injuries and depth and special teams. And right now, it's 5. And to be honest with you, after 4, you're already getting dicey. Your top 4, and I can even say even the 3 and 4, you've got some question marks. Jalen Reagor still has to continue his progression you've seen over the last week after a rough start. But regardless, Devontae Smith is in, Jalen Reagor is in. Greg Ward, it doesn't matter. We know what Greg Ward can do. He's reliable. He's heady. They don't have to coach him hard. He may be limited from an explosion standpoint, but he's reliable, smart, can contribute in a lot of ways. So he's 3, and Quez Watkins is a 4. Now, there's a little bit too much love right now going on for Quez. I think he's had a really good camp. And the preseason, I think people got to get a little overboard on trying to say, is he a starter now? I think he's a flash player who you can throw in certain packages to stretch the field. We'll have more on that in tomorrow's Inside the Birds on this, him and the wide receiver outlook. But those are your 4. So if you're keeping 5, you have to choose between Travis Fulgham, who, as you just mentioned, has kind of disappeared, right? You have to choose between him, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, or Osborne, I guess. Am I missing a wide receiver? Oh, yeah, and John Hightower, who we've outlined it many times. Is a guy who really struggles to get everything together, be consistent, has to be coached hard, and then he got hurt. So it's not like he was having the greatest camp to begin with. So by virtue of those numbers alone, I think what we're talking about here is Travis Fulgham versus J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Now, I think the last time we talked, Josh, I mentioned to you, Arcega-Whiteside made a tackle on special teams against the Steelers. That's not something he's done in the past, playing on special teams. But he's playing on special teams now, which is a big thing if you're a 4th or 5th wide receiver. And of all the guys I just mentioned, while he might not be the explosive, dynamic guy that they thought he was when they picked him in the 2nd round, he is not as much of a headache. I don't want to call him a headache. He's not as much of a challenge for the coaches. Like, he's invested. He's a smart guy, a lot of football intelligence. He tries hard. They're not worried about where he's lining up or whether he knows the playbook. Those are the kind of guys you want to coach and get the most out of because you can rely on them. So if he can continue along this path, do some things on special teams, maybe catch a ball every once in a while when he's in there, and he is playing in the slot now, which I think might be a better spot for him anyway, then I can see the coaches at the end of the day deciding, let's go with him instead of Fulgham. But I don't know that I'm not locking that down right now. It just seems to be the way it's trending at the moment.
Yeah, and listen, I know there is a group of Eagle fans who don't want to hear me say this, but you can't be a guy who caught 23 touchdowns in 2 years at Stanford of all places, and be an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, you got to Stanford and you were a high-level receiver for David Shaw for 2 years for a reason. I don't think it's an accident. So, listen, if you could carve out a role in playing special teams to being maybe part of like a red zone package, they just go big receivers all over the place. There's a role for that. And so I know Eagle fans are like, Jay Josh stinks. But you know what? He can't stink that much because you know what? He's in the NFL right now. You know who isn't? Shelton Gibson.
Right. I mean, and you know, look, the book on Travis is he tends to get down on himself. He tends to lose confidence. We saw that last year when Alshon came back, right? So he's got to. I still think talent level, you want him to make the team because if his confidence is high, he can go out there and make plays that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside cannot make. So it's important not to make this judgment right now. It's just, you know, we have a preseason game tomorrow. So we'll see. Travis can maybe snap his fingers and turn it. We've seen that with Jalen. Jalen had a tough first week.
Right.
Got some hard coaching, and now he's looking like he's the package right now. So hopefully for Travis Fulgham, he picks it up.
Geoff, I want to also ask you about Andre Dillard because yesterday a very under-the-radar transaction happened. I think a lot of Eagle fans or football fans in general maybe completely ignored, but the Panthers traded Greg Little to the Dolphins, got a 7th-round pick in 2022. And the reason why I think it's significant, I mentioned this yesterday, is because Greg Little was the 5th offensive tackle taken in the 2019 draft. The first was Dillard. So if the 5th tackle, who was a 2nd-round pick, gets a 7th-round pick, if the Eagles were to trade Dillard, that tells me right now, Geoff, that I don't know what they're exactly going to get in return for him, if anything valuable at all. So if Dillard is not on this team and you decide to move on from him, you might not be able to get anything more than a 4th or 5th-round pick for him, honestly.
It's a very fair point. I have no idea if they even still want to trade him or to want to continue to just ride it out and develop him, even if he doesn't win the job. You know, I mean, he's obviously been hurt throughout camp. He's got the knee injury now. He had the hands and the fingers seemingly giving him a problem a week or two ago. That's obviously not, you know, helpful for his image. But I think they want to see it through, at least get him back on the field and healthy and a little bit more productive to perhaps increase that trade value, because right now I don't know that it's looking very good. I tell you one thing, though, about the Greg Little trade that may, you know, perk our eyebrows a little bit is that, you know, Matt Pryor played well at right tackle against the Steelers, and he's actually had like a decent camp. And this guy is the biggest tease in the world because there are times where he flashes and looks like he can be an adequate offensive lineman. And then there are times where, like last year when they had him play left tackle and Josh Sweat just kept driving the truck over him over and over and over, and he looks like he can't even play in the league. But I you know, if you do the numbers now, it's hard to see Matt Pryor making this team, especially if Landon Dickerson at some point is going to come off NFI and take up a roster spot. But he has played well enough in some spurts and has been the first 1 or 2 guys off the bench last year to make you wonder if at cutdown you couldn't trade him and get some compensation for it. Because this, as you just mentioned with the Little trade, I mean, this is a very offensive line deficient league, and teams are looking for anybody who can show that they can just be adequate sometimes at the position just to have depth.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The next episode drops tomorrow morning with Geoff and Adam. Of course, right now out is the Q&A episode that dropped this morning. By the way, we should mention that literally every wide receiver that Jason Avant likes from the pod is doing well at camp. So yes. I don't know if that's a coincidence or maybe Avant is just that good at evaluating receivers. Well, we'll let the audience figure that out. But definitely you want to listen to Q&A because literally everything Jason has said about these receivers has come to life. And it's amazing and creepy at the same time. So
Right. It's amazing because Adam and I have been talking about the issues facing John Hightower for quite a while, going back to why he fell to the 5th round in the draft, and some of the feedback we would get, you guys are being too hard on him, you're stereotyping him or something like that. Then Jason says was even harsher than we were,
right? Yes,
in his assessment of him, and he coached the guy last year, And now everybody believes. So good. No, I'm glad we have Jason and Quentin on our platform to do that, because I know it does help to hear it from guys who played the game as opposed to sometimes hearing it from reporters.
Well, also you, like you just said, you and Adam, you present it as a report, you present it as sources tell, and then Jason can just come out there and just go blast mode on people like he did on Nick Mullins.
Yes, he has firsthand experience. Oh yeah, with Nick Mullins, that was an interesting quote there.
No, that was definitely a good quote. Geoff, before I let you go, I do want to go on defense real quick. Jonathan Gannon this week has been very complimentary of Alex Singleton, and between what you said to me on Monday earlier this week and what Gannon said this week, I'm starting to feel more and more that Singleton might have a big year this year in this defense, because I'm thinking more and more about, the way these defenses are run in Minnesota and Indianapolis. And this might be the first year in a long time that we see legit productivity from the linebackers in an Eagles defense, and it's going to be under Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, Josh, when you play a cover two, which is, I think you're going to see a decent amount of that from Jonathan Gannon. Now, it may not look traditional like cover two. It may look like cover two and then become cover one because you bring one safety down a little bit right before the snap, or it may look like cover one with a safety in the box and then he drops back a little bit. But the bottom line is, when you play any kind of amount of cover two, you do put pressure on the linebackers to stop the run, and they have to be rangy. Don't always have to be downhill, because your defensive line play and scheme can kind of try to funnel the run to the outsides, right? But you have to be rangy. You have to be sideline to sideline. And what Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton lack in bulk and being downhill style players, they compensate for being sideline to sideline rangy playmakers. So I think that is where their strength is. And yes, there's going to be a lot of responsibility on their shoulders this year as far as being key run stoppers, especially when the Eagles are showing those cover two looks.
At Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter, the Inside the Birds podcast. Subscribe, download. The new episode comes out tomorrow morning. Adam and Geoff will get you prepared in the morning for the second Eagles preseason game, which you can hear here on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff, great stuff today. And I guess I should say, can you enjoy a preseason game tomorrow night?
Yes, I like football in general, and I like learning about I probably actually enjoy it more than most fans, Josh. I mean, a lot of guys, fans turn the game off after the first quarter or second quarter, but I'll be in there third quarter, fourth quarter, wondering if Marlon Tuipulotu is going to make a play,
yes,
or anything like that. So I definitely dig the second. I dig the preseason games. I mean, I get what they are, but yes, I still enjoy them.
Well, it's good to know it's not just me and DeCecco watching the second half of the game. So.
Andrew DeCecco will be there for representing Inside the Birds. So he's got the credential for tomorrow night. So everybody make sure that they're following him and looking at InsideTheBirds.com for his coverage.
Well, also because of the fact that Andrew literally knows every single player's college background on the roster. So there's probably going to be a guy who makes a play in the third quarter that he's going to tweet about, and it'll only be him tweeting about it.
Yeah, he definitely nerds out like that. Even that play that Rager made the other day in practice, the big one-handed catch against, I guess the cornerback's name was Michael Jackson Jr. or something like that, I think. And Andrew had texted me, yeah, I remember speaking to Michael Jackson Jr. at the Senior Bowl a year or two ago. And I'm like, oh my God.
Good stuff. All right, Geoff. Have a good one, man. Catch you later.
You too, man. Take care.
Josh Hennig, Philly from Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow, football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, and then the aforementioned Andrew DeCecco on Friday's edition of Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. We're going to get back to your messages coming up next. Of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Uzi Wolf and Geoff are over there with comments. You can message the show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messaging, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live, as always, here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The text board is there, 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tomorrow night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Moving back. Hit. And he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
It's back to school, and at Matt Blatt Kia, our math is easy. Put zero down, make zero payments for 90 days, or pay 0% financing for 60 months on every new 2022 Kia Stinger and Sportage in stock. Plus, we need your trade. We'll even buy it for cash. Even if you don't buy a Kia from us, used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. Worried about your credit? Forget it. We finance your future, not your past. All new 2021 Kia Niro EXEV with zero due at signing and zero security deposit. Lease just $275 per month. It's basic math. Zero down, zero payments, or zero interest for 60 months.
Gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 and 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Niro 36-month lease, 10,000 miles per year. Excludes taxes, title, license, and dock fee. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 9/6/2021.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash Hump Day Wednesday edition here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. We'll get to all your messages on the multiple ways you get a hold of the show, whether you're listening on 973 ESPN FM or the 973 ESPN mobile app or watching the show. We'll get to all your messages coming up in just a moment. I want to remind you this hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. We're talking a lot of Eagles throughout the show. We'll get to some of your thoughts on the Birds right here on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, hat tip to Uzi Wolf, who's watching the show. He says, I'll admit that I'm wrong than I felt about Travis Fulgham, but yeah, I agree. It seems like a sugar rush still with him. Some act like he should be wide receiver 2 on the internet. Thanks for the correction, Josh. Hey, man, listen, I appreciate you chiming in. Listen, it's a huge difference. I'm a big believer in if you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Hey, we can disagree, but you mentioned some people on the internet. The problem on the internet is that a lot of people say a lot of stuff and there's nobody there to correct them or fact check them. We live in a world where everyone wants to fact check only certain topics, but not other topics. And people seemingly when it comes to sports can say whatever they want and nobody says anything. So, I just try to keep things straight as I see them. If I check the stats, I see something. And listen, you and I are on the same page about Fulgham. It's not like we disagreed about Fulgham, actually, Uzi Wolf. I think we both feel like that, Fulgham, might be more, might be more fluff than substance at this point. You heard Jeff Mosher say that, Fulgham, he's got to prove that he makes the roster. And on a team that's very thin at the wide receiver position, if J.J. Arcega-Whiteside proves himself more valuable as a special teams and slot guy, then Fulgham maybe doesn't have a role in this team moving forward. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I do appreciate Uzi Wolf and all of you chiming in and watching the show. Also, Jeff Bone Pookie over on YouTube says, speaking about the Alex Singleton linebackers, I hope he's ready when we see Saquon Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott because we need to stop the run, especially against those guys. Well, the thing with stopping the run, though, is it does in many ways come down to the defensive coordinator. One of the weaknesses of the Jim Schwartz defensive scheme was that he did not prioritize, certain situations. Jim Schwartz was a guy about getting downhill. Well, the problem with going downhill all the time when it comes to pass rushers, when it comes to stopping the run is you might need to stop the sweep. You need to stop the counter. Maybe you need to, contain the edge a little bit better. And if everyone's just running downhill at times, you lose containment. And one of the things that Barkley and Elliott both can do is they can run inside and they can run outside. And I think that's a huge thing to keep in mind. If you're an NFL team and you can't stop certain aspects of the run game because of your defensive scheme, you're always going to be limited in that manner. And I wonder to see if Jonathan Gannon's defense is going to be able to contain the run better than Jim Schwartz's was at times. And so even if Singleton and Wilson are ready to stop the run, or TJ Edwards or Sean Bradley or Davion Taylor, whoever's out there at linebacker, if the scheme isn't right, Jeff, you're going to have a lot of problems because Jonathan Gannon's whole thing is he's coming in with a new defense and a new philosophy and a new system. Well, that system better be able to deal with what teams are bringing in because Barkley, Elliott, and don't forget Antonio Gibson down in Washington. There are some dynamic guys coming out of the backfield in this division. This is arguably one of the best divisions in the NFL when it comes to running back talent. If you include Miles Sanders in that conversation, Sanders, Gibson, Elliott, and Barkley, these are some studs. And when they're all healthy, this might be the best division in the NFL when it comes to running backs. Think about it. Look around the league. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's down in Carolina, and so is Alvin Kamara in New Orleans, but Tampa Bay doesn't have a bunch of crazy, super elite guys, and neither does the Atlanta Falcons at this point, right? You look over at a team like a division like the AFC North. Najee Harris is unproven, even though I think he has a lot of potential. The Browns have Nick Chubb, absolutely, and the Ravens have some studs over there as well with guys like J.K. Dobbins, but the Bengals running back is good. Mixon, but he's not elite, and he's had health issues. So, to me, I think you could argue the Eagles are in the division with some of the best running back weapons in the entire NFL, and if your defense isn't ready for those weapons, you're in trouble. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Also, we got messages coming in on the text board. 609-403-0973. By the way, Joey D chiming in says, Josh, anyway, we get some fantasy football segments and maybe some major college football team talk coming up. Well, Joey, you must have missed some of my conversation on Monday with Jeff Nadeau. And I know that Mike Gill does the Jeff Pasquino during the season. I'll be having my buddy Andy McNamara from Sportsnet to talk some more fantasy football coming up, probably either later this week or next week. So we'll definitely have you covered on the Sports Bash and Game Night on the fantasy football side. I gave you guys some unsolicited advice the other day when Alan Hearns went down with the injury. Albert Wilson, the Dolphins, is going to be definitely a guy you're going to want in fantasy football for those of you who are in 10 and 12-man leagues. For those of you who are in those deep leagues as well, Randall Cobb of the Packers, he's going to get targets. You can't tell me that Aaron Rodgers asked for the Packers to acquire Randall Cobb and all of a sudden he's not going to get playing time. And by the way, after Devonta Adams, who are you going to pick up? Marquez Valdez-Scantling? I mean, that guy's been boom or bust more than almost anybody in the NFL. But yeah, we will be doing some fantasy football coming up. And listen, man, if you've listened to me at all, you know I love college football. I've actually been working on a list of over-unders when it comes to the college football season. I haven't finished the list yet. But with college football about 10 days away, I'll be releasing my pack of over-unders that you want to maybe get involved with. College football season. College football, like I said, 11 days away. Week 0 is next weekend. Then the first official week of the college football season is the week after that. And, of course, we'll have a ton of games for you here on 97.3 ESPN FM for you to tune in and listen to. Also on the text board, texter says, you say that we can't blame Travis Fulgham for one loss, but you literally said that Wentz lost 3 games by himself. Listen, I can't blame Travis Fulgham for a loss. I can't blame that one guy for a loss because he's not a quarterback. The quarterback is the only position in the NFL that you are touching the ball and impacting the game on every single play. And because the quarterback always going to get more blame, they literally put wins and losses on your resume each and every week. So in the hierarchy of the blame game, the quarterback will always get more blame than the wide receiver, just by nature of the sport. Now, the wide receiver deserves blame when he drops the ball and the quarterback puts it right on his hands, and the wide receiver deserves blame when he runs the wrong route and the quarterback is during anticipation throw because of the route tree and it gets intercepted. But the difference between Fulgham and Wentz is Fulgham had one bad drop in one game that maybe you can consider was his fault and was the reason why they lost. But when Carson Wentz makes multiple bad throws and multiple bad plays, he gets more blame. Like I said, I go to the Washington game, the Bengals game, and the Steelers game, and I say, Wentz if he would have played better, you could have won those games. Now, also in those games, the Washington game, the Pittsburgh game, and the Baltimore game, the defense could have played better as well. So it's a catch-22. I just feel like if we're going to be hypercritical of the quarterbacks, we got to go all the way. But as I said last week, when Hurts put the ball right on Ertz and right on Rager, you got to blame the receivers for those drops. You can't blame the quarterback for those incompletions. One more wet message to get to here over at 609-403-1073. Texter says, any update on Devonta Smith? Will he play tomorrow? How is he practicing at all? Just curious. So the update is Devonta Smith was upgraded to limited at practice this week. He has been running team drills Tuesday and Wednesdays, joint practices. Nick Sirianni is not committed to him playing on Thursday, but we do know that Sirianni has said that he would like to see him get some playing time if possible. So I can't guarantee you he is going to play this preseason, but I can promise you that Devonta Smith is going to get more practice time. I don't know, though, if the doctors will clear him or if the Eagles coaches will be extra precautionary in him to get in the preseason. I would like to see him get some preseason action just because I think that the more time he gets with Jalen Hurts in real game time action, the better it's going to be for the regular season. Personally, I would like to see Devonta Smith out there in the preseason game, but we have not been told officially if he will play in the preseason, but we know he is practicing. I know last week he was doing some work on the side field because he was considered week to week. Then he was upgraded to day to day, and this week he was back in team drills as of Tuesday and Wednesday. So there's your Devonta Smith update that maybe you missed it, but we appreciate you chiming in, listening to the show. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash being brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. For great deals on the Acura's award-winning lineup, shop online at DelValleAcuraDealers.com. Keep your messages coming over on the text board 609-403-0973. We are also live on YouTube and Twitter where you can chime into the show on the video stream. And, of course, also you can message the show directly through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Download the 97.3 ESPN mobile app from the Apple App Store or from the Google Play Store, whatever device you have. We got you covered with the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. All the content from 97.3 ESPN.com on the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers is right there on the app. And, of course, don't miss out on all the local high school sports coverage as well on the app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
New Jersey car owners, stop what you're doing and come see AJ, the trade-in man, at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Cancel that service appointment. Let your tires go bald. Don't put another penny in that old car. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed, so cash in your vehicle now. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. New 2021 Nissan Frontier 4x4 truck. 0 due at signing. Lease $349 per month. Stuck in a loan or lease? We can get you released. We'll buy your car for cash, even if you don't buy a car from us. Worried about your credits? Don't sweat it. Get $3,000 back on every 2021 Nissan Murano and pay 0 interest for 60 months in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR based on $1,667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. 36-month, 10,000 miles per year lease. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 9/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. You watch the show, join the conversations, you watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. The 4 o'clock hour of the Bash being brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the Prop Swap app today. Keep your messages coming. We got a bunch of them that have come in this hour, of course. You can message the show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks First Bank of Seattle City. You're also live on YouTube, Twitter, comment on the stream. And, of course, text board is there for you, as always, at 609-403-0973. Still to come on the show, CBS Sports NFL writer Geoff Kerr. He's been covering the Eagles for us at camp over for 97.3 ESPN. He'll be joining us coming up. Talk more about the Eagles in the NFL at 5:25 today. So we'll be continuing the football talk, not just throughout the show, but all week long as the Eagles' second preseason game is tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. is the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Tonight on 97.3 ESPN, we have some Major League Baseball action going on for you tonight, as well as on Saturday. Baseball season continues, even though the Phillies keep losing. You want to keep an eye on the rest of the baseball world because, the Phillies, they need to win. But they need some other teams to lose as well. And right now, the Braves, they're playing a little too well for the Phillies. The Phillies really need to pick it up. So tonight, though, NL Central action. Brewers versus Cardinals tonight at 7 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN. And then on Saturday, we have the White Sox and the Rays. 12:30 coverage begins on 97.3 ESPN FM. A couple messages I want to get to over here that have come in this hour. Over on the YouTube stream, Jeff Bowden Pookie asked the question, if we keep Tyree Jackson and then put him on the IR, we might as well waive Fulgham. Here's the thing. I don't know if the Jackson move will impact Fulgham or if just Fulgham playing bad impacts Fulgham. I think the Fulgham situation and the Jack situation are different because they're different positions. to me, I want to know if Zach Ertz is here or not. I think has a huge impact what they do with Tyree Jackson. Whether they IR him, whether they short-term IR him, whether they try to sneak him through an injury settlement and then try to bring him back when he's healthy again, stick him on the practice squad, whatever the scenario is, I'm curious to see what they do with Jackson because it seemed like a lot of people thought very well of him. He was doing well at camp. He looked solid in the first preseason game. So you want to find out exactly, how that's going to work out for him. I don't know if the Fulgham situation is directly linked to him. I think the Fulgham situation is all on Fulgham. Fulgham has to turn it on, as Geoff Mosher said about 30 minutes ago. Fulgham has to hit the on switch. He has to get going in order to make this team. And to me, it's all on him. This isn't Tyree Jackson's injury. To me, Fulgham, he has to prove that he belongs on this team because 5 games last year is not enough for you to make a team. You got to go out there and keep doing the job. You got to keep going out there and putting in the work. And it seems like to me that this guy is just disinterested. This guy is just not plugged in. And I'm very curious to find out what Fulgham does the rest of the next 2 weeks. Does he appear in these 2 preseason games and ball out, or does he continue to basically evaporate like all the superheroes that got snapped out of existence by Thanos in the Avengers movie? That's why I feel like Fulgham's NFL career is looking more like someone who's getting snapped out of existence by Thanos than it is a guy with all the talent and ability that he has. He's got to wake up and get with the program. And for whatever reason, he hasn't. And I don't understand the reason why. It's very perplexing to me that we're even in this situation with Fulgham, because you would have thought that now that there's no longer an Alshon Jeffrey here, that he would come in the camp motivated and inspired and to be like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show everyone what I can do. And it seems like instead, the only thing I've heard or seen from Fulgham is, like I said, him being corrected by Nick Sirianni that he's got to drag the other foot. Like, that's all you got for me? Really? That's it? Like, man, it's a bad look, to say the least. It's a bad look when you're at these joint practices and everyone's talking about Quez Watkins, everyone's talking about Jalen Reagor, and no one's talking about you. Not a good look, to say the least, for Travis Fulgham. And like I said earlier in the show, and I'll say it again and again, I want to know, does Travis Fulgham make this team? Because there's a possibility he doesn't. And if he doesn't, it's on him. That's his own fault. He did this to himself. So a lot to keep an eye on with the Eagles as we progress through the preseason. And of course, you can hear the Eagles like a preseason game right here, starting tomorrow night, 6:30, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Talked a lot of football, a lot of Eagles throughout the show. We also talked Phillies earlier in the show. Phillies have lost 2 in a row. They are back in action tonight. Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies. And we'll get into a little more Phillies coming up in the next hour, as well as more Eagles and more NFL. Get you the latest news from around the National Football League, as we like to do here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, ready for this? Jake Arrieta, first start with the Padres, he's already injured. He left with a hamstring injury. And by the way, Cole Hamels been shut down for the year as well. He's done. So it seems like the Phillies, for lack of a better term, kind of lucked out in that situation. The Phillies needed pitching, and we were wondering, should they go get Cole Hamels? Do you even take another flyer on Arrieta? Now both of them are injured. So that kind of worked out in the Phillies' favor, to say the least. Now they just need to get Rhys Hoskins back in there and Zach Eflin back out there on the field, and they'll be good. By the way, remember the guy who shut down The Phillies on Friday night, Tyler Mahle, he gave up 5 earned runs over 5 innings to the Cubs this afternoon. But the Phillies couldn't score anything against him. This Phillies lineup needs to wake up. They need to get with the program because they're playing pretty pathetic. Bryce Harper looks like the only guy who's trying sometimes out there for the Phillies. All right, more Sports Bash coming up. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on a Hump Day Wednesday.
This is Renee.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Still to come this hour, Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, joins us coming up at 5:25 to talk for Eagles and NFL. We also love to hear from you guys out there listening to the show, your thoughts on the Eagles, the NFL, the Phillies, and more. Message show the 97.3 ESPN more mobile app priority messaging into the show direct message the show thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Also, the text board is there for you as always, 609-403-0973. And you can message the show while you watch the show on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. Of course, this hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Just got to give you guys update on everything that's going on in the sports world. You know, obviously, some things have happened throughout the show we want to hit on a little bit with you. The Phillies lineup just came out just a moment ago, so we'll get you the latest on the Phillies lineup. Some changes to the lineup, and I think it's a couple of changes some people will not be happy with. But over on the football side of things, we mentioned earlier in the show, Tyree Jackson, broken bone, is back. His preseason is pretty much done. He's supposed to be out 8 to 10 weeks. Be interesting to see what the Eagles do with him. Does he make the roster? Does he not make the roster? Do they IR him and basically redshirt him for the year? Is he someone that they try to put on the short-term IR and bring him back later in the year? What does that mean for the Eagles' tight ends situation? There are a lot of questions going on with this roster moving forward. As I asked earlier in the show, does Travis Fulgham make the roster? Because he has been completely nowhere. He's been nowhere to be found for the majority of 3 weeks. It's Rager, it's Watkins who are making all the headlines among the receivers. I haven't heard one thing about Fulgham except for the one video the Eagles put out there where Sirianni is coaching him up on dragging the back foot better to make a touchdown in the end zone. Also, some news around the NFL. Tevin Jenkins, the Bears rookie who is supposed to be their starting left tackle, he is going to have back surgery. He is going to be out indefinitely. So, the Bears have some issues with their offensive line. How that impacts the situation, we'll find out. Dak Prescott, a limited participant at Wednesday's practice, throwing but gradually. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I don't know who's watching Hard Knocks this year, but if you are, we're all suffering. This is arguably the worst Hard Knocks I've ever watched in my life. They are hanging their hat on Ezekiel Elliott's wrapping of gifts for Dak Prescott and the Ben DiNucci story. And the Ben DiNucci story is so bad, they're not even mentioning the other quarterbacks he's competing against to make the roster. You know, usually you say, hey, he's competing with Cooper Rush, and he's competing with Garrett Gilbert for the backup quarterback in the number 3 slots. And instead, it's just like, will Ben DiNucci make it? Let's talk to him about getting swag from Dak Prescott and him playing chess with Micah Parsons. Like, it's a bad reality TV show. You know, Hard Knocks used to be this great, insightful thing, and it feels like that the producers just, It's like they decided to take the easy way out with the production quality. It's like, is there really nothing better to talk about at Cowboys camp? And Mike McCarthy is the most uninspiring coach who cusses I've ever listened to in my life. Listening to Mike McCarthy try to get the troops riled up, it's a snooze fest. Like, I'm getting tired right now thinking about it. It's so bad. Like, I'm watching McCarthy and I'm thinking, does anybody get excited about this coach? Is anyone who's not a diehard Cowboys fan or a family member of Mike McCarthy get excited when he talks? Because I certainly don't. I'm not saying you have to be excited to be a football coach, but there's a lot of coaches in football who do a great job at inspiring their players, and they get you up and going. They get you excited for football. And Mike McCarthy, between his bizarre relationship with Dak Prescott and his inability to get you excited about football and playing the game, completely confuses me. I'm telling you guys, this Hard Knocks, it's making McCarthy look bad. It's making the Cowboys look bad. And honestly, it's making HBO look bad. Josh Hennig playing for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM. I mentioned before the break as well, Jake Arrieta and Cole Hamels, two guys who the Phillies theoretically could have gone out and gotten to really get in on their situation with their lack of pitching depth. Well, they're both out now. Jake Arrieta left his start for the Padres with a hamstring injury, and Cole Hamels has been shut down for the rest of the year by the Dodgers. So you're not going to see Cole Hamels again for the Dodgers, it looks like, because he's on the 60-day injured list. And Jake Arrieta is already injured with the Padres. So the Phillies missed something there. Dodged a bullet, as they call it there. By the way, how about this news just coming out? According to Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated, the Mets are leaning towards shutting down Jacob deGrom for the entire season. Previously, the Mets were hoping to have deGrom back by mid-September after his latest MRI, but now the team is, because they've fallen below 500, they may choose not to push their superstar to return, according to Sports Illustrated. The New York is not confident the right-hander's inflammation will be healed enough to resume throwing by August 27th, which would be ultimately land him on the injury list for the rest of the season. Now, The Athletic is reporting that any talks of the Mets shutting down deGrom are premature. So, conflicting reports from Sports Illustrated and The Athletic. Something to keep an eye on that deGrom situation, because no deGrom for the Mets. I have no faith in them to pan out. No faith in them at all to pan out. I don't think the Mets can win the division at all if deGrom is not on the mound, let alone make the playoffs or be contenders in the playoffs. So then it really comes down to the Phillies and the Braves, and the Phillies got to wake up. And they made a batting lineup change, and I know that Dan in the HT somewhere is going to cringe when I say this, but Odubel Herrera is back in the lineup, and he's leading off. Segura in the 2-hole, Harper 3, Romuto 4, Gregorius 5, McCutcheon 6, Brad Miller back at first base 7th, and Ronald Torres 8th. So this looks like your classic left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right situation with the Phillies lineup. So it seems like Girardi is trying to go a little classic, old school strategy, alternating the bats, try to swap guys around in the lineup to hope to maybe, ignite something. He had 3 hits last night, and the Diamondbacks are one of the worst teams in baseball. He had to do something. I understand that Herrera being a leadoff hitter is not ideal, and he has a poor track record this year at having success in that leadoff role. But I got to tell you guys, at least Girardi's trying something. You got to switch it up sometimes. You got to try something else. And maybe this alternating left, right thing will work. And even if Herrera goes 0 for 4, if it helps Segura if it helps Romuto, if it helps McCutcheon, then it's worth it. You'll sacrifice one spot in the lineup if the rest of the lineup gets picked up. For a team that is supposed to be as talented as the Phillies have 3 hits last night is completely and utterly unacceptable. Text board is open, 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can chime in on the show as you watch the show at 973 ESPN. Of course, priority messaging through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. There's a multitude of ways you can get a hold of the show. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM. A couple messages coming in. Texter says, I have no clue why the Cowboys are being featured again on Hard Knocks. There's nothing really interesting about what's going on with them. I think the Packers or maybe the Bears would have been a good choice. So a couple things. The way the Hard Knock rules work with the NFL, it cannot be a playoff team, and it cannot be a team with a first-year head coach. So the Packers couldn't have been chosen for Hard Knocks at all, even though we all would have loved to see it. So it had to be a team that was not in the postseason last year, and a team that didn't have a first-year coach. The Eagles were counted out as well. The Bears would have been interesting. I think they could have gone the Bears. I feel like the Cowboys might have asked for the attention and the cameras. And maybe they wanted, and maybe Jerry Jones wanted the attention, considering he is the most valuable sports franchise in North America with the Dallas Cowboys. But you're right. I wouldn't have made the choice. Now, I wouldn't go as far as say there's nothing interesting about what's going on with them. I think there is some interesting storylines with the Cowboys, including their new defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, including the return of Dak Prescott from injury, including their offensive line situation. Will it be better than last year? Will it be healthy compared to last year? But I got to tell you guys, Hard Knocks is bailing on half of those stories, and they're going Mike McCarthy's speeches, Ben DiNucci, and Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm not impressed. I'm disappointed. I expect more from Hard Knocks. Tom from the Village chimes in at 609-403-0973. He says, do you think Fulgham was just a flash in the pan while he was hot? He was the best option in a poor receiver group. Doesn't say much. Even Riley Cooper caught lightning in the bottle for a year. I mean, it's certainly possible that Fulgham was a flash in the pan. It was a pretty big flash considering that what he did for 5 games. I don't think it's anything to be discounted. I think that, Fulgham is going to tell us a lot about what this organization plans to do moving forward. Because when you look at what he did last year, and when you look at what they're going to do moving forward with the Eagles wide receivers, if Fulgham can't succeed with Sirianni and Petula and Aaron Moorhead and Steichen coaching him, then he's never going to succeed. This was supposed to be the coaching staff that was supposed to develop the wide receivers. This was supposed to be the coaching staff that was supposed to elevate the receivers. So I don't understand what Fulgham's doing. Why is he not doing more in camp? Why has he been invisible in the preseason? So Tom in the Villas, there is a possibility that what you're saying is true, that he was a flash in the pan. But like I said before, it was hard for me to absorb that possibility because of the fact that I came in thinking that this coaching staff could get the most out of Fulgham. And it seems like Fulgham himself is disinterested in being the best he can be. Now, Geoff Mosher mentioned earlier in the show that Fulgham's a guy who, has these bouts of lacking confidence, and he goes through these spells where he lacks confidence and he kind of shrinks from the moment. If that's the case, then he can't play in the NFL consistently. The NFL is about putting in the work every day, whether you are having a good day or not. Your self-confidence has very little to do with why an NFL team will or not keep you. I think that we forget the fact that, listen, Fulgham has bounced around to multiple teams, and maybe there's something to be said for that. Maybe Fulgham is just a guy who filled a void, like Tom from the Villa said, and he's just going to be a guy moving forward. Maybe it just is that. But it's because of that possibility, which is why I keep asking the question, is he going to make this team? There's so many scenarios how Fulgham does not make the team. Now, the one that I didn't think of before Mosher mentioned it today on Football at 4 in the 4 o'clock hour was J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You have a guy in J-Jaw who had a tackle in special teams, showcased himself as a guy who can do more than just be an outside receiver. He's been working as an inside slot guy. And so I got to have to wonder, is J-Jaw going to beat out Fulgham? I didn't think about that earlier in the show, but now I'm thinking about it. If the coaches think that Arcega-Whiteside is working harder and could be a legit special teams contributor, and maybe they develop a package with him and a couple other guys on the goal line, then who needs Fulgham? Fulgham ain't tackling anybody in special teams. J-Jaw is. I mean, I understand there's a contingent of Eagle fans who are like, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, he stinks. Yeah, but guess what? Maybe he could beat out. Maybe they can beat out Fulgham. Josh Hennig playing for Mike Gell here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash being brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Visit them online at eastcoastroofing.net. The other thing I want to bring you guys up to date on, if you didn't listen to the show earlier when we talked with Mike McGarry and Dave Weinberg, Tom Farraco, longtime boys basketball coach at Middle Township from 1981 to 2016, that he had cancer. Then he came back for a couple of years from 2019 to this past year. 731 wins. He is retiring in what I described earlier as his own terms. Tom Farraco, longtime Middle Township boys basketball coach, won 3 state titles with the Middle Township Panthers. Just long, great career. One of the staples of coaching in South Jersey. Guys like him, Dave DeWeese, Gene Allen, Paul Rodeo. These are some of the, Coach Bruno over at Ocean City. These are some of the longest tenured boys basketball coaches in South Jersey, and Tom Farraco will no longer be among them in terms of coaching. And, I asked the question earlier, I think that South Jersey has been very fortunate to have all of these coaches who have had so much success for such a long period of time. And to lose Farraco to that group is definitely going to, make a bit of a void, because as more of these guys retire and move on with their lives, who's going to fulfill that void? Who's going to replace them? Who's going to become the next big coaches? Because these guys aren't getting any younger. They can't coach forever. And I think it's definitely an interesting conversation point moving forward about, what happens in South Jersey with these coaches. All right, coming up next on the other side, Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to more football and NFL. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL writer, joins us next here on the Sports Bash. I'm Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. As always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Follow at 973 ESPN on all the social media platforms. We will be joined by Geoff Kerr from CBS Sports coming up in just a bit here on 973 ESPN FM. Interesting day in the sports world as obviously the Eagles and the rest of the NFL are just hours away from their next preseason. Also, of course, other news around the NFL. We'll ask Geoff as well his thoughts on is he watching Hard Knocks? I'm curious, Hard Knocks used to be the thing that people watched and people consumed and people were like, oh yeah, Hard Knocks. You know what I mean? And it's like, now it's like, does anybody care anymore? I feel like we used to care about Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks used to be like appointment watching, right? Hard Knocks used to be the thing that everyone, you turned it on and you're like, you go to Hard Knocks and you're like, okay, I'm going to get something interesting. I'm going to get something that's going to inform me. I'm going to get something that's going to entertain me. And now Hard Knocks is just turned into this thing where it's like reality TV gone wrong. Right? Like it's turned into something where Hard Knocks used to be something where it was like, hey, I'm going to learn something about this coach or this team. I'm going to learn something about these players I didn't know before. I'm going to tune in and maybe I don't know who the third or fourth string quarterback is, or I don't know who the third string running back is, or the backup defensive tackle who's trying to earn a roster spot, right? Hard Knocks used to be the thing where you went to and it was like a big deal, right? And now Hard Knocks has turned into this thing where it's like, does anybody care? Because it's not really giving me much. So we'll ask Geoff Kerr about that coming up in just a bit when he joins us here on 97.3 ESPN. There he is, just as I mentioned him. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, joins us right now here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. So, Geoff, before we get to the Eagles stuff, I got to ask you, are you even watching Hard Knocks this year?
Sadly, yes. I didn't finish last night's episode. I got about... where am I at right now? I'm about at the part where they're scrimmaging the Rams.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So you got the necessary points for me to ask this question. I think this is the worst Hard Knocks ever.
It's terrible.
I think it's completely boring. I don't understand why we spent half an episode in the first episode watching Ezekiel Elliott wrap a gift for Dak. Like, I don't understand. Like, to me, Hard Knocks is supposed to be interesting and entertaining and informative and like getting to know people. And it's like, but I know who Ezekiel Elliott is. And anybody who watches football knows who Ben DiNucci is. And I love how the guy in the voiceover, Liv Schreiber, right?
Yeah.
He turns around and he's like, Ben DiNucci, will he make the roster? And then you spend the next 10 minutes telling us about Ben DiNucci. Like, don't tell us who Cooper Rush is. Don't tell us who Garrett Gilbert is. No, it's about Ben DiNucci needs more swag. Put on a hoodie. Put on a sleeve. Like, this is the dumbest Hard Knocks ever.
Unfortunately, Dak Prescott will not be taking that luggage to Canton. Like, it's come on, man. Like, this is literally what we got. Like, the first 5 minutes, I thought this was going to be excellent because, Dak was talking about, his surgery and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, they're really going to go deep. They haven't done anything like that. So if I learned anything, it's that Mike McCarthy is actually a worse coach than I thought he was.
Mike McCarthy, I think, is the most boring coach in the NFL right now.
This is a boring Dallas team. Maybe that's the impression Jerry Jones wants to get. They're boring. Like, here's one for you, Josh. You like how Jerry Jones was eating the McGriddle and they couldn't even show the McDonald's sign on the McGriddle? Like, really? We're going that route? I don't know. Hard Knocks the last 2 years have sucked. And I've told people this. I like Hard Knocks, but I think it sometimes is the most overrated show on television. Oh, it's training camp. This isn't Hard Knocks from like 2005, 2010. It's really gotten downhill the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm suffering through it because I feel like if I don't suffer through it, I'm going to miss something. But like last year, at least it was interesting because you learned about the COVID protocols and you got an inside look at how it's affecting the teams and all that stuff. And then a couple of years ago, we saw the interactions with, like we saw the genesis of the explosion in Cleveland with the coaching staff, with Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson arguing, like, you know,
that's the last good one, by the way.
The Browns one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Browns one was very good, actually, now that I think about it. But it feels like we've come so far from like the entertaining and the information side of Hard Knocks. It's turned into like a bad reality TV show.
I feel like I think especially the first time Hard Knocks was out with the Chiefs and the Jets in like 2001, 2002, that was different because we never seen that access before. Like you could get if you went to camp, but you weren't getting that in-depth access. Now I feel like with so many media members, and again, they're limiting media members now. I know NFL teams are doing this. The Eagles are one of them. They're limiting media members right now. I just don't know. You're not getting. There's so much access, yet there's not enough access. If that makes sense. And I feel like Hard Knocks, because of all the NFL films and all the cameras and stuff, I don't know. I just feel like Jerry's limiting something in there. Like, I don't really care what Zeke got Dak for his birthday. I just don't.
Geoff Kerr joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Geoff, let's hit a couple of things with the Eagles here. Tyree Jackson, broken bone in his back. I'm curious what this does for the Eagles roster, because do they put him on the IR for the whole year? Do they put him on the roster, then designate him for 8 weeks, return on the IR? Do they try to waive him and sneak him through waivers and then try to bring him back later on? There's a lot of ramifications because it seemed like this guy was going to have a chance to maybe be on the roster, and now with the injury, it complicates things.
Yeah, it seemed like he was going to be on the roster. They were going to keep 4 tight ends if they were going to do so, or they were going to cut Richard Rodgers, which, again, I think you could still do that. No one's going to pick him up because no one's picked him up in previous attempts. But I feel like you have to put him on the 53 and you have to put him on the 8-week IR. But here's what scares me about that. What if someone else gets hurt and you need that spot? That's what's going to be interesting. But if you feel he's going to contribute to this offense, and again, he's a developmental player, I think he needs the practice reps. And you can't just go stash him on the practice squad. So, 8 to 10 weeks. So what's that? We got 2 weeks of 2 final cuts. So it's 6 to 8 at that point. I think you put him on that 8-week IR, and you get him healthy, and then you develop him the rest of the year, because that's what he needs. He just needs the practice rep. He's a guy that he could have been that guy to how can I put it in words? Like if they needed somebody because Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert got hurt, he could step in a pinch. But it's almost like the Jordan Mailata route. You weren't expecting Tyree Jackson to actually do anything significant this year, but this is a future roster asset down the line. So what I would do, 8-week IR, bottom line, and then just develop him for the rest of the year, and hopefully he gets healthy.
Is there also a possibility that in their effort to try to make sure they don't lose him, that they have one of those like handshake agreements, like, hey, we're going to release you, but we're going to bring you back later. Then the guy hits free agency and someone blows him away with something you weren't willing to give him. So then the roster spot that maybe could have gone to somebody else because Jackson's going to be injured, you lose that guy too.
Yeah, and that's what scares me. And I'm trying to remember who was the player that they kind of did this to last year, and they took a deal with somebody. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Oh, it was a tight end. He went to the Colts.
Yeah. wasn't Trey Burton. No, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't tight end went to the Colts. Oh God, it's been a year already, and it's already stuck in my brain. But yeah, I don't. think,
Noah Togiai.
That's it. Noah Togiai. That's it. I good job, Josh. Anyway, that was gonna haunt me the rest of the episode, by the way. So, but yeah, say you do a deal like Noah Togiai, and I don't know, the New York Giants or the Dallas Cowboys need a tight end, and they hear about how good this guy's doing, or the Patriots, for example, and they just blow him away with this killer offer. I don't think you can risk that. Like handshake agreements, everybody goes, yeah, we shook hands on it. You know what the old Emperor's New Groove saying was? Here's the thing about handshakes. You need hands. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie or not, but, that's the thing. I think you just got to keep him on the roster. If you got to kill an 8-week roster spot, so be it. Just find a way to keep him on the 53. He looked like he was going to be part of the team anyway.
The other question I've been asking throughout the day, Geoff, about the Eagles is, everyone I read and listen to, okay, all the national media has been at Eagles camp because they joined practices this week, right? So I turn on SportsCenter and Sal Palantonio and Mike Reese are there, right? And, I pull up the CBS Sports app and I see you writing about stuff, right? And I see, people at The Athletic writing about stuff, right? And all these people are writing. I constantly see two names this week. And I hear two names every time. Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, again and again. You know whose name I haven't heard? You know who seems to have disappeared? And I'm starting to wonder, will he make the roster? Travis Fulgham.
Yeah. It's something, because at the beginning of camp, I said one of Jalen Reagor or Travis Fulgham or both have to step up for this receiving core to be decent / formidable. Well, Jalen Reagor showed up. He got off to a bad start, and everybody was already calling him a bust. I'm like, guy's 22. He's not a bust. It's like, okay, I get it. Death in the family. Very understandable. This guy looked like he came to work once camp actually started. So I got to give my props to Jalen Reagor. And I've been high on Jalen Reagor. I don't think he's ever going to be Justin Jefferson. But I also said Justin Jefferson would never put up his numbers in the Eagles offense last year. It just wasn't going to happen. Yes. So Jalen Reagor, I think if he can just be a solid number 2 option who can catch a deep ball and just be consistent, not every week, but, make those home run explosive plays, this wide receiver core is going to be much better than I actually think it's going to be. And I haven't been too high on it because of guys like Travis Fulgham, who has done nothing. Quez Watkins was one of those bubble guys like him, John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He was one of the 3 who would step up. Also, okay, now you got something there. Now you got something with Quez. Now you got something with Reagor. You know what Devonta Smith is. Travis Fulgham, I think he makes it because he's better than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but I'll tell you what, that 5-game stretch looks like a mirage each and every day. And it's always – he's not been good, he's not been bad. Well, now he's been bad. So that's a bad sign. And this guy's got to get open in preseason games. He's got to catch some passes. Maybe he'll just be a special teams guy from this point. But I liked how he opened up about the Alshon Jeffrey thing last year. But if I don't want to say if I'm a bubble, if I'm on the roster bubble, but if you're in his status, you don't do that. You are not a superstar. You may think you're a superstar. You're not a superstar. Well, throw me 10 balls a game. Well, that's great. You got to get open 10 times a game first. Jalen Reagor has just, let's put it this way. He's not even talking. He's just going out there and making plays. And Jalen Reagor is going to make this receiving core formidable. I tweeted that today. If he keeps doing what he's doing. But Travis Fulgham, really concerned.
Yeah, man. I'm looking at this team right now, and I'm looking at it like I know Reagor, I know Devonta Smith, I feel like Quez Watkins, and I know that Greg Ward are making this team. Yeah. And I'm starting to wonder, is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside the 5th guy because he plays special teams? Like, it may just come down to that because we know this team's history of keeping guys literally because they're special teams guys. Yeah, and honestly, special teams is a big part of the game, especially when you got one of the youngest coaches in the NFL in Michael Clay on special teams. So, you got to keep that into consideration as well. And I'm not sure how good of a special teams guy John Hightower is. I know he's been banged up, but I'll tell you what, I would keep John Hightower on this roster just because of his deep ball presence. Like last year, there was a time, I think it was after week 8, he led the NFL in 50-plus yard catches. Isn't that insane? Like over Tyreek Hill,
over all these guys, over all the deep threats. It was John Hightower of all people. That guy has potential. Now, I'm not relying on John Hightower to catch 5 passes a game, but if you can get that 40, 50-yard catch out of him and he plays decently on special teams, he does his job. So I think it's going to come down to Fulgham and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And I would take Fulgham because I'm not a J-Jaw fan whatsoever, but special teams may be the difference, and that's how J-Jaw gets it.
Geoff Kerr joining us here on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Geoff Kerr CBS for all your Eagles and NFL coverage. By the way, a little more of like, shall we call it, not really news, but more like, procedure going on. Kerryon Johnson went unclaimed on waivers. He reverted the Eagles' injured reserve list. So, I guess good for him, right?
Yeah. I mean, the guy was hurt. I don't think anybody was picking up that contract anyway. I feel bad for him because I thought he had a really decent chance of making this team when training camp started. If I had to do a 53-man roster, I would have put him on it, but Jordan Howard's just outplayed him on mine.
Yeah, and the fact that, if you can't stay healthy, there's no way you're going to make the team anyway. It's like, there were reports that you didn't come in great shape in the offseason training activities. So,
you have to wonder what he was doing. What all these guys do. I mean, I get things are limited now a little bit with COVID, but you still have the opportunity to work out. Like Patrick Mahomes, in the 2020 offseason, he said, yeah, I was busy. I built a house. So, and he said, I got my workout in. That's what he told me. I go, what'd you do during the pandemic? He said, I built a house. He said, and the first thing I built was my training room, my weight room. And, I worked out, then I worked on the house, and I worked out again. I'm like, this guy's got it.
Right, exactly. One more Eagles thing I want to ask you about before we get to a couple other NFL things, Geoff. So we went under the radar to some people. I asked this question to Rob Motti. Yes, I want to ask you the same thing today. So Greg Little, who was the 5th tackle taken in the 2019 draft, got traded from Carolina to Miami for a 7th round pick in 2022. The number 1 tackle in the 2019 NFL draft was Andre Dillard. Does the Greg Little deal hurt Andre Dillard's value on the market?
I think it does to an extent. Now, I think this league is left tackle deficient. And Greg Little was terrible. A lot of Panthers people thought that was a bad pick to begin with. Not the Panthers front office, but obviously. But, the media guys, they're like, okay, so, did the Panthers miss out here? And he never panned out. So I think everybody was shocked the Panthers actually got something for him. But it does hurt Andre Dillard because the Eagles may have been able to say, hey, we'll take a 4th for him, or we'll take a 5th, or we'll take a player you don't want. Now can you even get 6 for Andre Dillard? A 1st-round pick 2 years ago you traded up for who really hasn't played? I don't know. I think that Greg Little trade kind of hurt Andre Dillard's value a bit. And I'm in favor of keeping Andre Dillard on this roster. I know there are people out there saying, oh, he doesn't deserve to be on the roster. He should be cut. Well, no, you just don't do that. You're just chasing cloud at that point. I'm dead serious. You're just chasing cloud if you want Andre Dillard cut. I don't think the Eagles would actually do that. What I think they're going to do is they're going to hold on to him, and if something happens to Jordan Mailata, then they're going to put him in trial by fire and see what he's got. But, you can't do worse backup tackle depth in this league. Now, LaRaven Clark is back. I think that helps. But Andre Dillard, he was a 1st-round talent for a reason. All these guys have talent. Is Andre Dillard mentally tough enough? That's what we're going to have to figure out. He didn't have a good camp. We know that. But I'm also not judging players based on practice reps against Josh Sweat, who's just been tearing everybody up anyway. People, like I said, I make a big deal out of practice, but as a former player myself, people make way too big of a deal out of practice reps.
Well, one guy who will not be practicing, who I think could have an impact on that team's future outside of Philadelphia, this situation in Chicago, I think is interesting, Geoff. So Tevin Jenkins going to have back surgery. Who knows when he's coming back, basically.
If he comes back.
If he comes back this year. He was supposed to be their starting left tackle, and I'm starting to wonder, so if Andy Dalton doesn't play well, is that because the tackle's not there? Is that because Andy Dalton's just not playing well? If you put Justin Fields in, who's blocking his blind side? The Chicago quarterback situation just got a little extra dicey, Geoff.
Yeah, and, Andy Dalton says it's my time. I'm like, dude, you've had your time. You had 10 years of your time. You have been the most overrated quarterback in the NFL the last 10 years. And I know a bunch of Andy Dalton stands. So look what he did for the Bengals. I'm like, no, he actually hindered the Bengals. The Bengals, they had a guy who was good enough to start, but he wasn't good enough to do anything else. And he was a good quarterback, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, he was more like a Dave Krieg than a Joe Burrow is a franchise quarterback. Andy Dalton is not. If that team had Joe Burrow, they would have won playoff games. I'll say it. But yeah, I mean, Andy Dalton's going to be a statue back there, and Jason Peters or whoever's going to block for him, oh man, it's going to get ugly. I think you might have to put Justin Fields in there week 1 just to salvage what is left of this offensive line, if you want to be quite honest.
The idea of Jason Peters blocking Andy Dalton's blind side is kind of hilarious.
That would be a Hard Knocks episode. Let's just switch the HBO films.
It's funny you said that because somebody texted it earlier and says, why didn't HBO pick the Bears?
They would have been a perfect – oh, you know why? Playoff team. They couldn't.
Right, because they played the Saints last year.
Yeah. You always forget that. By the way, that was the funniest playoff game I ever watched. So –
I watched the Nickelodeon broadcast.
I did too. So this is funny. I watched I had to do the early game and the late game. So the middle game, I kind of had my break. I was going on the treadmill and stuff. I put on the Nickelodeon game. I'm like, man, this game wasn't on Nickelodeon. This game absolutely sucked. Because I was having a blast watching Mitch Trubisky just get absolutely destroyed by that defense.
I'm telling you that I hope they do the Nickelodeon broadcast again because I thought, first of all, the fact that Ian Eagles was Ian Eagles' son?
Yeah, it's his son.
Yeah, it was. I thought that him and Nate Burleson rapport was great. I mean, I didn't even really remember who the Nickelodeon young lady was, but
it was Gabrielle. She's on Nickelodeon. She hosts the Kids' Choice Awards and stuff. I'm trying to remember her name. Yeah, but I love the broadcast, and I know going into the negotiations with the NFL, CBS. The NFL asked CBS, hey, you guys gonna do more of this because this is kind of cool, and CBS has something in the works for that. I don't know if it's going to be a Nickelodeon game again, or if they're going to do one game each year, or they're going to do something for Paramount. I don't. But part of the CBS broadcast agreement with the NFL is extra stuff via Nickelodeon, and they did with the Super Bowl this year. They're going to do it with future Super Bowls and stuff. I think they have time to figure everything out. But if they did one Nickelodeon game a year, I think that would satisfy everybody's appetite.
I don't know if I would watch the Super Bowl with Nickelodeon, but I would definitely watch other games that are not the Super Bowl with the Nickelodeon.
What made it tough for me, and again, I am an employee. I am wearing the CBS logo right now, but it was tough because I hate missing Nance and Romo. And, maybe biased, you could say whatever. I think they're the best broadcast team in the business right now. And so it was tough for me to miss them to watch the Nickelodeon game, but I had to watch the Nickelodeon game. I think next year, if they do a simulcast, it has to be with the number 2 announcers or something like that. Or maybe, it would be cool if they did an exclusive game. I just don't know if the NFL would actually allow that.
Yeah, I don't know if they would allow it to be exclusive. You're right, because of the fact that, a lot of that money for those advertisers come from it being on the main networks. The money is for CBS, NBC, Fox. It's not for the secondary channel. Like Monday Football has their multiple channels they do on ESPN, right? Or college football games, they'll have 3 different channels hosting the same game for the playoffs, right?
Yeah. By the way, this is something, Josh. Are you going to be watching the Peyton Eli broadcast this year? Or are you going to be watching the actual broadcasters?
That's a great question. There's a part of me that wants to watch Peyton more than the regular broadcasters.
Yeah, I honestly think they should have moved Peyton to the regular broadcast and just said, hey.
Well, you know why they did that? Because Peyton wants his Omaha company to be involved in the production, and he didn't want to commit to the full 17-game schedule. Apparently, he's only committed to 10, I think, games?
Yeah, something like that. And I don't think the ABC games are. By the way, I have told people this. This is why I hate the younger Twitter generation. Sunday Night Football is the best. No, it's not. Monday Night Football on ABC used to crush that. Just between the opening montage and Hank Williams Jr. singing, and it just got you fired up to watch a football game. I'm sorry, I am not waiting all day for Sunday night. I'm actually beat by Sunday night because I do this for a living.
Now you sound like Gil. Gil always comes on here and says he's like, give me the London game at 9 a.m. instead of the Sunday football game.
I do like football all day, but man, you're beat when you watch that stuff all day long. I get excited for Thursday night football because it's earlier in the week and
Right.
it's kind of like an appetizer toward the main course. But I used to love Monday Night Football. It was great with Tirico. Gruden was good. Like even Jaworski and I know the Kornheiser experiment didn't work, but I like the idea. But overall, now it's again, I like even McDonough wasn't bad, but I don't know. Now it's just I don't know if it's the announcers.
Well, the announcers are better than what they did with the whole Jason Witten experiment in the
that was
Boomermobile.
terrible.
That was an abomination.
I actually think that's what turned me because everybody's trying to find the next Tony Romo. That's the issue. Everybody's trying to find that guy. Well, I don't think there is another guy like that. Honestly, CBS may have the next guy in Burleson, but he's doing CBS this morning now. He's already expanding his platform. So, but yeah. Oh, by the way, Josh, there's going to be a lot of Eagles games on CBS this year. There's 4 of them. Times are changing with that broadcast agreement. CBS has the AFC, Fox has the NFC, but there's a lot more flexibility, a lot more wiggle room. So you're going to see more games on the Tiffany network, and you're going to see more Fox games. It's weird, but you get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one of those people who gets biased about which network it's on specifically. I might have a critique of who the broadcasters are, maybe.
But he's retired.
Yeah, he's retired now, thank goodness. But it's one of those deals where it's you look around and you're like, to me, I don't really care which network. I just need it on a network. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I view it. Honestly, though, I'm assuming CBS is going to probably expand their NFL coverage anyway, just because they're losing the SEC in a few years.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that CBS is going to make up the difference in the programming somewhere. So I'm assuming why not be the NFL?
Yeah, and obviously the NFL is the biggest breadwinner. I mean, it sucks CBS lost the SEC, but at the same time, they were what they were paying for the SEC for 20 years was highway robbery. So it took them 20 years to finally figure out that. So, again, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I honestly thought when they were going to do the TV deal, they were going to get rid of the 1 p.m. regional games and Turner was going to get in or somebody else was going to get in and they were going to have every game on TV, but then that gets rid of the Sunday ticket. And I think the NFL wanted to keep that. I don't know who that will go to. I really don't mind the DirecTV thing, but I'm not against if it would go on to say ESPN Plus.
Well, the world is going digital, to say the least. Geoff Kerr.
By the way, Amazon. It's going to be an interesting one too next year.
Amazon's going to be the biggest pain for me because I'm the only person who doesn't have Amazon Prime.
I don't either. And you know why? This is why I gave up Amazon Prime. So I had for years. And I used to get it for the free shipping and all that. They would give everybody the same perks I was getting at Christmas time. I said, forget this. I'm done with you guys.
Yeah, to me, unless you're ordering from Amazon, you don't need Amazon.
Yep.
That's how I look at it. And I'm going to be the guy who finds the way. I forget which app it is, but it's you can watch every game as long as it's a primetime game on your phone, but the one app is only through Wi-Fi and the other app is only through your cell phone service. So, because of the way the NFL restrictions work.
Yeah.
So, as long as I figure out what that is, which one is which each night, I'll be able to watch it through my phone.
By the way, my favorite article to do every year is the game that it's in December. It's on Saturday in December. The exclusive game on Amazon Prime when no one can find it. That I'll tell you, the traffic on that article is awesome because all of a sudden, 4:30 Saturday afternoon, right? Where's the 49ers game? I can't find it. It's amazing. I tell people this all year. I tweet about it all week, and people still don't listen.
But they read the article, so that's what matters.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. They read the article. Not everything's clickbait. There is information to be about.
Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports on Twitter. Geoff, good stuff today. I'll catch up with you Friday.
Yeah, sounds great. See you Friday, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, filling in for Mike Gill. And, of course, Geoff Kerr's appearance here being brought to you by Calvi Electric Company, Atlantic City, and their new residential division here to help with all your home and business electrical needs online at calvielectric.com. And that's the end of the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Great stuff from Geoff Kerr there from CBS Sports. Thanks again for Geoff Mosher for all the great information on football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. A earlier edition of Weinberg Wednesday on 97.3 ESPN was today. And, of course, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. If you missed any of those interviews I just mentioned, you can catch them next on the Sports Bash Best Of, or just go to 97.3 ESPN on YouTube, where we post all the interviews from the Sports Bash, game night, and more on 97.3 ESPN YouTube. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll catch you tomorrow here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tomorrow night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Hit back. Hit. And he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.